let's blast off. Happy Valentine's Day. Federal layoffs incoming. AD Vance, pro-Russia arc, and more. It's Freaky Friday. Get in now. I like how you don't require chatters to be verified before chatting. Yeah. Mass Fed layoffs of probationary employees already started yesterday. I know, we're going to be talking about that, of course. And more. I live in Alaska and half of my friends were fired by the Trump admin today. Yeah, Alaska as a state is uninhabitable. It's entirely propped up by federal grants and also high degrees of socialization, including oil, including oil revenues that literally feed back into a pay structure for people to live there. It's ridiculous. These guys are, I mean, it's one of the many different ways in which the federal government keeps people alive, and nobody really recognizes it until, you know, all of a sudden those dividends get taken away, or all of a sudden those grants get taken away. It's the same reason why I'm always actively yelling about the U.S. Postal Service, telling people, like, don't fuck around with that. You know what I mean? Because if it goes away, you're cooked. Like, people don't understand it. They have no capacity to comprehend that they are completely cooked without the U.S. Postal Service. Oh, it's not profitable. It's like, it's not supposed to be, dumbass. I don't think people understand how much the federal government plays an active role in their lives in, you know, making sure that, again, they purchase meat without fear that they might be poisoned by it, right? Things like that, all the way to direct grants that they get that normalize their energy prices. It's very frustrating. The libertarian paradise that people wanted is closer than ever before. Okay, what is this? I'll buy your bath water.
Okay, guys, I need to start doing shit like this. What the heck? I'll buy your bath water is the first comment I read.
I work for a congressional committee, and all my friends and family have been texting me asking me if my job is safe, and I have to explain to them that when they say federal employees, they really mean executive branch employees. The USPS has been self-funding for a long time. It isn't easy to turn profits when you're self-reliant and operate 7 days a week to make more money. All right, let's see this. Let's see this Connor interview with Anthony Padilla, where I got to mention, I guess.
So you're interviewing based on an image mood board?
Kind of. So then, like, on like my right monitor, I'll have like this mood board or whatever.
That's
that, like,
so
if
smart.
I can run out of questions, or like,
I would have never thought to do that.
Yeah,
That's
it'll
so smart.
connect. I have it somewhere. I can pull it up.
I just have text bullet points, and my brain is just like doesn't work.
Yeah,
that
like
way.
I'll show you the George Santos one where I had like all these.
Was there just a picture of an AR?
Oh, yeah, that one. There's like Joe Rogan.
Dude,
yeah.
That's so smart. That's so smart.
Here, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, I gotta see it now.
So this was on the right monitor during the George Santos stream.
You just literally have pictures. Yep.
9/11, me, Marjorie Taylor Greene is so awesome. Aiden Ross.
Twin Towers. You have Hassan. You have Joe Rogan. You got Tomater.
Yeah, at one point.
Connor's content is next level. Yeah, I mean, he is. He's very good. He's brilliant. I love his shit. Fantastic. Your hair in that pic is my fave. Nick got a massage gun as his V-Day gift, but turns out he already got one from you. Oh, yeah. I bought one when I was at his house.
What? You have one?
I think Hassan bought this and left it here.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, but you don't have the tools.
They're all in there. Yeah.
Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you.
I think this one might be a little bit better.
Why?
Feel how heavy it is. That's Hassan bought that.
But there's no like settings. Mine has numbers.
Isn't this a band?
Guys, hearts for Hassan, guys. You know.
I miss Nick. You gave it to FD Sig, didn't you? No, he stole one. Okay. That's one. And I've bought multiple massage guns since then.
Just give it back to him. Now you have an excuse to see him.
Oh.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Yes.
Why doesn't he just lie, man? How does he drop the ball when it's already in his lap? That's just how he is. That's like 90% of his content. It's Black History Month. You can't say he stole it. Bill Burr on billionaires, so based as usual. I've heard he said, Bill Burr is awesome. He's on the exact opposite tip of whatever the fuck these like wealthy, out of touch asshole comedians are on. He is fully leaning into his George Carlin arc, I would say. I like he is becoming the only comedian that I can think of from my generation of like all-time greats, all-time goats that didn't turn into like a weird cancel culture warrior that is incredibly annoying. Trump is talking nonsense about Europe live. My goat. Let's see what kind of brilliant things he has to say. I'm sure he has plenty of incredible things in the tank today. The Macy's, did you have a playlist or no? If you don't, it's fine. We got a bunch of stuff to watch, but Norm Macdonald was great as well, but Norm Macdonald's style is a little bit different, I think.
Sometime maybe around April 2nd.
He is. My goat is
I would have
live.
done them on April 1st. Believe it or not, I'm a little superstitious. No, literally, we had it planned for April 1st. I said, let's make it April 2nd. You know how much money that costs? That costs a lot of money just that one day, but we're going to do it on April 2nd,
for the
I think.
playlist.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
The lead prosecutor in Eric Adams' case resigned today, saying anyone who didn't press forward would be a coward. What's your reaction to that and to the overall implication that politics were at play here?
Well, I don't know about it. I mean, obviously, I'm not involved in that. But I would say this, that if they had a problem, and these are mostly people from the previous administration, you understand, so they weren't going to be there anyway. They were going to all be gone or dismissed. If not, they know on Tuesday they're all being dismissed. The whole country is being, because what you do is you come in and you put new people in. So when you say resign, they're going to be gone anyway. But I know nothing about the individual case. I know that they didn't feel it was much of a case. They also felt that it was unfair with the election. Look, I would know that better than anybody because I was weaponized more than any human being in the history probably of the world. And I won the election in a landslide, winning all 7 swing states, winning the popular vote and everything else because the people got it. It was weaponized. And I was weaponized literally weeks before the election. But I think there's also something to be said. I read that. There's something to be said for what they were doing. It looked to me to be very political. But why didn't they bring this up like 4 or 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, or whenever it happened? They just sat around and didn't complain. Then all of a sudden they complain, and they know they're all being dismissed anyway. So, that's called politics, I guess. Yeah, please.
Earlier this week, you predicted that all Hamas would hand over all of their hostages. Happen tomorrow in terms of
I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow at 12 o'clock. It was up to me. I'd take a very hard stance. I can't tell you what Israel's going to do. But I watched the last people come out, and I looked at a before and an after picture. One guy was a big, strong, healthy guy. Could say he was a little bit overweight. He's not overweight anymore. He looks like he just came out of the Holocaust. It looks like a Holocaust picture. I've looked at him for a long time.
Bro.
And they've been treated very badly.
Bro,
young lady
one of the
came out
craziest
last week, her
parts
hand was
about
blown
the
off.
American president saying this is the other side is completely, the other side is never reported on. Like, you literally saw for months, okay, Palestinian prisoners being released that looked incredibly in dire conditions, in horrifying conditions, because they were directly tortured, okay? And now that, like, Israel decided to do counter propaganda on that front, it's over. There's not a mention of that at all. And virtually every single person is just like talking about the last 3 people that were released. They were in horrible conditions because of Israel. Like, what are we talking about?
They said, no, we've decided we're going to release the hostages. So I actually think they should release all of the hostages. Remember, they're probably as bad as they looked. I mean, I don't like to say that, but they looked real bad 4 days ago, 5 days ago when I saw them. And the young ladies that came out were treated really badly. You don't know what happened, but I do. They were treated really badly. But as bad as they look, the ones that follow probably will look a lot worse. I think they're sending out their most healthy. And they've been hit hard on that, Hamas. So they probably didn't want to release. But they changed their mind. I said 12 o'clock tomorrow, and all of a sudden, 2 days ago, yesterday, they said they're going back to releasing. But this all started by them saying, we are not going to release any more hostages. And then yesterday they said they are going to release the hostages. But I think they should release all of the hostages.
About 75,000 workers took this deferred resignation. It's a little bit short of the 5 to 10% goal you were hoping to hit. Do you think you'll have to make up the rest of that number in layoffs?
No, look, that's 75,000 more than we would have had. And nobody knows what that final number is because in the end, I think a lot of people aren't going to show up to work. A lot of people, they got used to staying home and quote, working. But, you know, I wonder if they had other jobs or other things. You know, they have a lot of problems with that. No, 75,000 is a lot of people. And we paid them well. You know, we gave them a lot of months of severance pay, if you call it that. But no, I think you'll probably have some more too, in addition. It's a big, tremendous saving for our government. We want to downsize government, but make it better. Run it better, but downsize. Yeah, please.
So, may I ask about the UK? I understand that you had a phone call with Keir Starmer
I
yesterday.
did. I just signed a letter to him, asked for a meeting, and I agreed to the meeting. We're going to have a friendly meeting. Very good. We have a lot of good things going on. But he asked to come and see me, and I just accepted his asking very soon. I think he wants to come next week or the week after.
And what do you hope to discuss?
I don't know. It was his request, not mine. But, you know, I've met him twice already. We get along very well. He's a very nice guy. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Do we deserve this? Is that what America deserves for its crimes? I mean, I don't think anybody deserves this. I think, ironically enough, these are the same crimes that America was committing around the globe, but now is committing to itself in terms of the shock doctrine, in terms of, forced austerity measures and crippling the economy at the behest of private capital. We're doing that, but now domestically. Things that we have done globally, which I think are completely unacceptable, completely inappropriate, has caused a lot of pain. We are doing to ourselves. We've been doing to ourselves these things as well, but I think we're doing this to ourselves even harder now than ever before, and in a more aggressive rate than ever before. Have you seen this community note about one of the hostages? What? Okay, I don't want to look at that. That seems insane. Okay. That seems like a crazy community note. All right. I work for the federal government. Everyone is scared. We all about to be shit canned. We took government jobs for less pay, for job security and pensions. Now none of that matters. Yeah. This was the executive order that Trump signed before the, oh yeah, this is the new incredible executive order from Donald Trump, you know, saving the American population. President Trump signs an executive order halting federal funding for schools that mandate the COVID vaccine. It's his COVID vaccine. He took credit for it. Okay. He talked about Operation Warp Speed. And now he's like, oh, if you take it, if you make it mandatory, yeah, you don't get federal funding. What an insane set of circumstances, dude. I mean, what is happening, dude? Incredible stuff. Constantly in this weird dynamic where on the one hand, he's like, remember when I did the COVID vaccine and it was awesome and it was so sick and I saved so many lives? Biden could never. And then simultaneously being like, and yeah, if you make the vaccine mandatory, then, if you actually get people to use the vaccine that I made, by the way, with my own two hands, we're going to take funding away from you. Crazy how we haven't even been a month into Burger Reich. I know. They're intentionally tanking the economy. I think they are just following through on the libertarian dreams that many wealthy people have fantasized about, purposely dismantling the federal regulatory state piece by piece at the behest of tech giants and CEOs and the executive class so that they can make more profits off of all of these previously government-controlled sectors, and also simultaneously destroy the regulatory state. Liz Franzak thinks they want to do a new Bretton Woods, but in Florida. Yeah, I think that could be the case. It's very difficult. I do interviews all the time lately, and one of the questions always is like, well, what do we do here? Like, what do you think is going to happen? And I don't know. I don't know where to go from here right now. All I know is that we need better leadership. And it's very difficult to figure out like exactly what's going to happen, exactly how competent they are. Here, by the way, speaking of which, The prosecutor who blew the whistle on the Adams deal resigned from the DOJ. She was a Federalist Society member and a Scalia clerk. Okay, so there's this side of the process too. Okay, which is crazy. Like, you got Reagan judges on the federal courts stopping Trump's like insanely unconstitutional agenda. You got Federalist Society judges being like, this is so corrupt that I can't deal with this. Like, you're ruining an active investigation into obvious corruption of the highest order by doing more corruption, by doing more quid pro quo. I wish instead of completely wiping out federal agencies, they just move the headquarters to a different regions of the country. Can just one person go to jail? No. I mean, no, not at all. You can't do that. You can't send anybody to jail. God forbid you send even a Democrat to jail. That means a powerful person in a position of that means a person in a position of power can ever get legal scrutiny, and that's a dangerous precedent to set. Okay, we can't do that. God forbid we do that. We cannot do that. I mean, that's it's just really dire situation, dude. What is most demoralizing is that my normie friends are like, yeah, man, that's awful. Anyway, these are college-educated resistance libs. Yeah, fuck that Federal Society judge, man. Did she think this whole time their legal framework was at all legit? No, they are just opportunists. They want to advance their careers. Some of them are naturally conservative. Some of them basically lean into that kind of politics. But it doesn't really matter. Like, what's the difference between Asmongold and Matt Walsh? Asmongold doesn't fully believe the things that he's saying, but he knows that it's like getting him a lot of views, so he's saying them, right? Matt Walsh does believe the shit that he's saying. Bro, where in the fuck in LA can you buy wintergreen Zins? Nowhere. I'm still holding on to every time I'm like running out of flavored Zins, someone just sends me a care package. How long till riots? I doubt that riots will happen in this country. We are very sedated. We are a servile people. We fancy ourselves to be revolutionary people, but we are very docile people, I think. The revolutionary stint of America was purposely gutted, partially as a direct consequence of our neoliberal dominance, post-Cold War, post-World War II, so much prosperity, so much dominance. And Americans have designed a system that shelters them from all of the violence that keeps it together. I mean, literally look at Afghanistan. Look at America's war on terror. Americans still maintain the position that they're anti-war, not recognizing that war is a constant part of American existence. It's just that we've basically outsourced it. This was amazing, by the way. This is the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, ladies and gentlemen. Remember this? Just got married. Homosexuality was a phase, says Tim Dillon. She's a beautiful angel, Tim. Easy to see how she ungayed you. Is this real? Yeah, no, it was real. This is not a fake tweet. I think he might have deleted it, but I remember seeing it in real time, live when this tweet was out. We'll do the RFK Jr. compilation of all of the insane things that he said about vaccines and the like in a little bit. But, you know, awesome stuff overall. Brilliant minds in charge of all of these departments. It's a really interesting predicament because, like, on the one hand, you think about like Pete Hegseth or Tulsi Gabbard, right? But their positions in government are already like positions that require you to be very violent. And also, if you're incompetent, that's not necessarily the worst thing, right? Like, if the American war machine and the person most responsible for the American war machine is an incompetent, drunk asshole, maybe that's not the worst thing. But the Department of Health and Human Services requires competent leadership, because it actually does touch the lives of many Americans in a very meaningful way. It is supposed to be the umbrella organization that controls so much of the regulatory space in terms of health and wellness. And the fact that you have a guy who is antagonistic to medicine, modern medicine in general, leading the charge there is truly terrifying. And one of the first initiatives that they put forth was, of course, taking out mood stabilizers and antipsychotics, assess the prevalence of and threat posed by the prescription of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antipsychotics and mood stabilizers, stimulants, and weight loss drugs. Incredible stuff for them to come out and just be like, you know what we need to do at a time when seemingly week after week there is another dude with a lithium prescription that is off the medication or just never really got the medication necessary to combat whatever is going on up there, has ease of access to an arsenal of weapons and just goes into a fucking school and lights it up. What we should do is make sure that there are less mood stabilizers. Okay? It's great. A perfect combination. Readily available weapons everywhere. Okay? And no health care. Or even with the lucky few that have access to health care, once they do get that health care, once they do get a script, right, that the doctor told them to take, they won't be able to take that script, that prescribed medication, because we decided it's bad for you. Cool stuff. I wonder what that will do to the suicide rate in this fucking country that's already incredibly high to the combination of the factors that I mentioned, which is healthcare is inaccessible and paywalled. And also on top of that, weapons are very easy to acquire. Great stuff. You know, I look at this nation, I look at this wonderful nation, and I think to myself, you know what this nation needs? More insanity, okay? Yeah, Republicans love talking about how gun violence is a mental health problem, and then also turn around and go, we are not doing anything about mental health. As a matter of fact, we are not going to improve mental health in this country. We're going to make it worse. I honestly don't get how people can hear you say these things and just be like, this guy's an idiot. I mean, it's pretty easy. I think people just say that because of partisan perspectives. They're not applying reason or logic to the equation at all. I think they've been prone to hate, and it's understandable. That's it. That's where it comes from. It's not about personally thinking about what I'm saying and maybe thinking, all right, well, there's some truth to all of this. I get it. Yeah. Has Hassan been streaming for 4 hours? No, I've been streaming for 1 hour and 3 minutes. I've only been streaming for an hour so far. A lot of suicide talk happening now on the CPTSD forums because of that from the White House. Yeah, that's the other side. Like, there's CPTSD, but then there's also PTSD for veterans. There's also that too. Like, what do you think will happen to the veterans when they don't have access to the SSRIs? Great stuff. Definitely. Like, Americans medicate not because they, I don't know, are predisposed to insane levels of consumption and everything is burger. Every solution is just like consume more product, consume more commodities. There's kind of a reason for why a lot of Americans require this medication. You know? I like that there are a lot of things that require a multi-pronged approach. There are a lot of issues in this country. Virtually every issue in this country requires a multi-pronged approach. But instead of trying to address all of those problems individually and then fix virtually every aspect of society that is designed in a way to make sure that you're maximizing profits for shareholders, instead of undermining that structure and fixing it at the behest of the citizenry, we've decided to make things worse. Okay, and take away all of the remaining SSRIs is not the end, you fucking ape. Zero, everything is about you. Zero. Yes, I think this existence, like your existence this way, is certainly proving that medication is bad to take. Yeah. No, go ahead. Prove the point that I was making already. I also never said SSRIs is the end all be all. I said that for a lot of the problems that Americans face, the solutions are complex. It's multifaceted. Okay, I'm drunk right now, but okay, chatter. I mean, it's 12:44 here in California, so I don't know where you're at, but goddamn, okay. Don't check logs on stream, but the last day they logged in here says a lot. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Virtually everyone's lives would be better if they had ease of access to mental health treatment. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. All right. I love you, chatter. You are loved, regardless of your disagreement with me right now in your drunken state. Okay. Anyway, let's continue. Mass layoffs are beginning on federal workers. Here we are.
Now to Washington, and the Trump administration's beginning mass layoffs of federal workers impacting multiple agencies. Tens of thousands of employees are expected to lose their jobs. Our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, is tracking the latest from the White House. Good morning, Rachel.
Rebecca, good morning to you. And federal workers who did not resign as part of that buyout offer were warned that they could possibly be laid off or fired. And this morning, we are learning that mass layoffs have started across multiple federal agencies. This morning, the Trump administration taking its sweeping efforts to shrink the size of the federal workforce one step further, ordering agencies to lay off nearly all probationary employees, meaning those hired within the last 1 or 2 years. A move that could impact as many as 220,000 federal workers. At the Department of Veteran Affairs alone, more than 1,000 new workers were dismissed. Overnight, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau also firing term employees, with expectations that the rest may be fired today, leaving a skeleton staff of around 5%. The CFPB and VA are just two of several agencies that have started to cut federal workers so far. The administration also targeting the Department of Education and the Environmental Protection Agency. The largest federal employee union slamming the layoffs, calling it a blatant violation of the principles of fairness and merit that are supposed to govern federal employment, and saying the firings are about power. At some agencies, workers learned by email they had been laid off. But at the Office of Personnel Management, others found out on a call.
You will receive your termination notice via email shortly. As a result, your employment with the Office of Personnel Management will end today.
Elon Musk, who has billions of dollars in federal contracts and is spearheading the efforts to slash government spending, also calling for the elimination of whole agencies. Musk sitting down with Indian Prime Minister Modi Thursday before he met with President Trump. The president unsure the capacity of Musk's meeting and whether Musk was acting as a private citizen wanting to do business in India or a member of the administration.
I would imagine he met possibly because, he's running a company.
Trump pushed on how a foreign leader may know the difference.
Well, he's meeting with me in a little while, so I'm going to ask him that question.
He's like, I'm the head of state and I'm here to do business too. I personally am basically like the reverse of Elon Musk, someone who was elected as the head of state who also wants to do business deals. He's someone who is a businessman who's doing head of state stuff to basically do business deals. We're two sides of the same coin, It's cool.
So the Indian Prime Minister was also asked if they discussed any business. He would only say that he has known Elon Musk for a very long time, guys.
All right, Rachel, thank you so much for your reporting.
The Department of Education canceled more than $350 million.
The way media has just reported these as mass layoffs is absurd. The firings are illegal. You can't just mass terminate federal employees without cause, even if they're probationary. Even if they're probationary, people are losing their health care and lives are being torn apart. It's so fucking upsetting. Yeah, remember the 23% underemployment statistic that we looked at yesterday? 23% of the current existing workforce is either doing part-time jobs or basically makes less than $25,000, which is a poverty wage, okay? Now, remember, the reminder here is that obviously the people that are currently being fired are not exactly caked up, but they at least have like decent jobs in comparison to the people making $25,000 a year. And we're firing them by the tens of thousands as well. Okay? Not only is this firing process unimaginably cruel, okay? It's also not done for good reason, and it will lead to a lot of these services that people rely on that they don't even realize that they rely on to go away, to be crippled. Of course, saying that this is illegal is virtually inconsequential in this process because what are you going to do about it is basically the attitude that is demonstrated by this administration over and over again. A lot of people also don't understand that the federal government in and of itself does have a bunch of jobs that are just simply good to have, right? Not every single person is dealing with issues in the most efficient way possible, but it doesn't matter. It's not supposed to be that way. Jobs are given to people in many instances, whether it's the federal government or even in private enterprise, not because like you have to have this many people working on this job, but sometimes jobs are given to people because it's good to have jobs. Okay? It's good to keep people busy. It's good to keep people, it's good to make sure that they have a way of purchasing more commodities, to have disposable income. It's an important facet of the federal government. Okay? And in many circumstances, considering, especially on the private sector, how much these guys engage in layoffs, most of the jobs that were previously done by 5 people, 6 people are now being done by 1 person or 2 people as a consequence of technological improvements that make the workforce more productive. But that also means that there are less people making an honest living in that process. And that's a bad thing for the economy. Okay? Saying that helps the conservatives' points that these people don't do shit and should be fired. Yes, because conservatives are stupid. Conservatives are stupid and live in a fantasy world where they think every single person on the job site is maximizing their efficiency at every point, not recognizing that they themselves in their own immediate workplaces are probably playing that very same role. Okay, whether it's a blue collar job or a white collar job, whether you're on the assembly line of some sort, you are not maxing out your efficiency at every given point. And it's understandable that you're not doing that. You're not supposed to do that. It's ridiculous to do that, especially if you're working for somebody else. Okay? The question I have for people is, and I guess like if you want to have this conversation with conservatives, you can have it on the basis of AI, because they were genuinely fearful of artificial intelligence and self-driving cars taking away key parts of the trucking sector, right? They were truly worried about that. And the question remains, okay, if AI and self-driving cars are going to eradicate the trucking sector, is that the best possible thing to do when we're moving forward? Should there not still be someone that sits on top of that truck, even if there's a FSD structure that exists? Okay, we criticize, or not criticize, but like we make fun of Japan, for example, where there's like so many people working in these like ridiculous positions. There's always like an old person that covers like 4 sides of any sort of construction, where they're just sitting there with a light stick in their hands going like this all day, every day. Why does that guy do that? Now, obviously, he's too old to be doing that to begin with, and it's crazy that he's still working. But why is that guy doing that job? Does he have to do that job? Could that job be relegated to I don't know, a automated light stick? Probably. Definitely, as a matter of fact. It's not necessarily just because of safety, chatters. A big part of why these jobs exist is so that there is money to be given to these people so they can make a fucking honest living. People don't understand that. I agree that maximizing efficiency is bad for working conditions, but framing these jobs the only way to give people money isn't the right rhetoric when talking to conservatives about this. No, I'm not simply talking about this from the perspective of these are jobs that need to exist so that people get paid. I'm simply tackling the concept of why jobs exist to begin with in certain sectors. Okay? In order for a society to be healthy and to function, you got to get people jobs. Okay? You got to make sure that they're fulfilling a role, a duty. Okay? We need that. We need that more than anything else. Okay? But on top of that, a lot of these fucking jobs that are being eliminated right now are profoundly important anyway. And the consequences of eliminating these jobs and these mass layoffs is only going to be seen further down the line. Okay?
Dollars in spending yesterday for what it called woke initiatives, and much deeper cuts could be ahead. President Trump wants his pick to lead the department, Linda McMahon, to dismantle it entirely. But many people are confused over what the...
I'm a probationary employee that took the fork offer and still got fired late last night by email. If you're like me, you can still file an appeal with the MSPB for wrongful termination, even if you're probationary.
department does and how school districts could be affected. Caitlin Huey-Burns is on Capitol Hill. Caitlin, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Nate. Well, you may know billionaire CEO Linda McMahon is the CEO of...
I don't disagree, but those people can't be doing nothing. Making things more efficient and cutting worthless jobs isn't inherently bad. It's about how the surplus produced is allocated. Yeah, except it is inherently bad. Okay? The proper process in this circumstance is not to fire people. Let's say technological efficiency has made it so that you can get the same work done a decade prior in literally 2 hours, okay? In a decade ago, you could get the same workload done over the course of an 8-hour workday, okay? Now you can do it in 2 hours. What is supposed to happen in a normal society, in an evolved society, is that you still get paid the same amount of money, okay? And you work 2 hours instead of the 8. But what obviously capital owners want to do in that process is fire all of the additional employees and make sure that 1 or 2 people are now tasked with this because they can do the entire workday's workload in 2 hours. That's efficiency. That's productivity. That's what this means when people say, oh, productivity's increased, whereas wages have remained stagnant. To your point, China has automated seaports. They still have longshoremen, but they work in a chair and use joysticks to... Exactly. You have to have people still working. Technology is supposed to be a benefit to take away the burden of day-to-day work, okay? It's not supposed to be utilized in a way to offset the existing labor force. It's not supposed to be utilized in a way where you're engaging in mass layoffs, okay? That is what's so silly about this conversation. And many Americans who are primed to believe that capitalism is good, unironically, write away their own death warrants. Okay? They don't realize it's like, no, we have to be super invested in efficiency. It's like, it's okay. It's okay to have efficiency at the job site. Okay? But what you fail to comprehend is that efficiency is not supposed to displace you. That efficiency is supposed to reduce your burden. It's supposed to reduce your workload, not actually keep your workload the exact same, but now your output is 10x because of technological advancements. Okay? That's the major problem. That is, I think, in this day and age, with AI becoming a conversation at the forefront of what will happen in the next step with labor, which is, I guess if you want to consider it like the next industrial revolution, okay? A lot of people who are so brain broken by capitalism being the only game in town, so fearful of the alternatives, have refused to reckon with what will happen once so much of the labor force is displaced. What do? Do you become a Wall-E style a person stuck to a chair that's like constantly consuming stuff? Is that your only purpose in life, is to become a part of the consumption engine? And then those who are not a part of that consumption engine are working the assembly lines and working for meager wages and dire conditions and worse conditions as we supercharge the exploitation? Is that what we're supposed to be doing? Is that the perfect future? Is that the utopian future that technology and all of its endless bounty was supposed to offer us? It's crazy. It's crazy that so many people do unironically feel like, well, I guess that's just the way things are. Even from a capitalist point of view, you're supposed to slow hiring, then trickle layoffs and buyouts to not collapse the local economy. People think food stamps is about being altruistic and not about keeping the stores open and the crime rate down. Exactly. That's the other side of this process that people don't understand. Wealthy libertarians used to call welfare the riot tax because they understood that without any social safety nets, there would be too much chaos and too much instability. But these guys forgot that aspect, okay? Or at the very least, they're stress testing how much they can destroy the working poor without ever having to deal with the violent consequences that are inevitable, okay? I thought food stamps were subsidizing farmers. It subsidizes everything. Food stamps are there to subsidize Walmart paying very little to its workforce. I manage a team in corporate America. I've been put on notice that if I do not train the new skills into my team and their work can be done with AI or automation, then I have to lay them off. It's insane. I don't understand how people can't comprehend what future we are leading, what future we're bouldering towards, like a very negative one, not a positive one at all, okay? How do people not see that? Meanwhile, as I'm talking about the dire situation, what terrorists are we platforming today? I'd love to see some Al-Qaeda old-timers getting some W's in the chat and telling how pog it was to do 9/11. Yeah, dude, big fan of 9/11 me. I'm a big fan of 9/11. Dog, you've been in this community since well, you unfollowed and refollowed, but you've been in this community since 2021. Okay? Like, I said America deserved 9/11 in 2019. What happened? Did you rewrite your fucking brain in the process? Like, what happened? For years and years, you were in here, okay, as a fan. Subscribe for 2 months in the past. Like, how did you forget your previous assumptions that you had made about me only with, I don't know. Like, how do you go from have a wonderful Saturday, buddy, to, oh, you love terrorism? Like, you were in here, okay? You were literally in here under the assumption that maybe I don't love terrorism. That person had fun here. That's what I mean. It's crazy. Like, how do you lose? This RP shit is the tits. I mean, fuck politics. Give me more of this, Lamau. How do you lose sight of like who you were and what your previous positions were? That's truly shocking to me. Rita's comment about America. Yeah, America will be taken over by Nazis within 5 years. You heard it here first. My man literally called out the current state of affairs in 2021. Okay? Like, he was right. You were right in 2021. When you were a fan, you were right. Now this is the type of insane shit that you're saying. How did this happen? How did you get here? Okay? What steps did you take in your life that caused you to go from, in 2021, correctly predicting the current business, the current order of affairs, into becoming a part of that movement? Think about that. What is this? It's called 5 Asmin videos a day. Your editors are pumping one every 2 days. I mean, there's nothing you can do on that front. You watched Asmin for 3 years? No, I don't think this is an Asmongold fan. I think this is anyway. Try to go back to where your brain was in 2021, because you clearly had better opinions back then, chatter, okay? My logs are so embarrassing. I asked you to watch Mr. Beast multiple times before Trump got shot at. That's funny. Maybe it's because I didn't game. No, he unfollowed in like somewhere along 2022, it seems, and then came back just now to say, what terrorism are we watching today? Hassan hates Jews. Nice, dude. Yeah, maybe if you keep writing that in the chat over and over again, it'll become true. It's not. It's never going to be true, but it's okay. You can keep fantasizing. Weirdo.
WWE, the former CEO, and she also served in the cabinet in Trump's first term. But now she's in the unique position of trying to lead an agency that President Trump wants to get rid of.
I mean, there's a certain group right now that's going insane over your chair and the cost it has. Yeah, ironically enough, I got it for free. Logitech sent it to me for free. But of course I would pay for it.
And I am really all for the president's.
Now let's talk about what actually matters, okay? The fucking Department of Education being abolished, okay? Eyes on the prize, everybody. If you're coming in here to be like, I am going to advance the agenda of my favorite content creator online by, sparking the flames of drama at a time when the fucking Department of Education is slated to be abolished, when tens of thousands of federal employees are being laid off, and this is what you care about, I'm sorry, you are a very unserious person. I know that this sounds like fun stuff to focus on. I get it. I totally get it. Especially because it keeps your brain occupied at a time when change seems so far away, okay? But goddamn, please, I don't want to yuck your yum, okay? I do not want to yuck your yum. If this is what you fancy, if this is what you like to do, great, more power to you, okay? But don't try to like masquerade this as some sort of serious political commentary. You understand? With all this DOE talk, what's your take on homeschooling? I think it should be abolished. I think it should be illegal. And in many competent countries, it is. I wish these cheese brain YouTube drama frogs would get back to their financial aid office jobs and beating their shit off to them 2 boys on Supernatural.
Mission, which is to return education to the states.
At her confirmation
Why
hearing
is Triple H
Thursday,
in the background? I don't even know what the fuck's going on
Linda
there,
McMahon
honestly.
acknowledged that doing away with the Department of Education would require an act of Congress.
It is set up by the United States Congress, and we work with Congress. It clearly cannot be shut down without it.
While President Trump has long pledged to abolish the agency.
Oh, I'd like it to be closed immediately. Look, the Department of Education's a big con job.
On Thursday, McMahon suggested that some of the department's core functions could be moved elsewhere.
It is not the president's goal to defund the programs. It is only to have it operate more efficiently.
Established by Congress in 1979, the Department of Education has an $80 billion budget. But most of the funding for education comes from state and local governments, with the federal government contributing only about 13%. The agency provides financial assistance to low-income schools, administers Pell Grants, oversees federal student loans, and enforces rules around civil rights and students with disabilities. Arnie Duncan ran the Department of Education under President Obama and says states are already in charge.
What the Department of Education does is adds additional resources to make sure children with special needs have access to public education. Children who need access to food have that. Children who need access to pre-K has that. So to somehow act like the U.S. Department of Education is in charge of education in America is beyond dishonest.
Now, the Trump administration is considering executive action that would direct the Department of Education secretary to put forward a plan.
Remember, guys, Biden could never possibly, wait, what the fuck? Hold on one second. Why does this, what is happening with my alerts? God damn it, dude. My alerts have been busted for some time now. I don't know why. I got to fix them at some point. But, okay, that's neither here nor there. All right, so my layout is like that. Yeah, Biden could not abolish student loan debt, which was in his legal purview, okay? Which like, regardless of whatever the Supreme Court says, like, he absolutely had the right to do that, okay? Meanwhile, Donald Trump is literally abolishing the Department of Education in its entirety. Oh, my God. What a ridiculous situation we're in, dude. What a crock of shit this is. How did you predict this? What is this? Oh, shut up. Yeah, Mankind. Undertaker throws Mankind off top of Hell in the Cell. Oh my God, you got me. You got me. I watched the clip. I watched your clip. Bergamania strikes again. I'm pretty sure he just got Trump to nominate our North Dakota State Superintendent as the new Assistant Director of the Department of Education. In her statement, I'm excited to support over 49 million students in America. I think it's really funny to think that Donald Trump consistently states that countries like Norway, Sweden, Finland, and even China are so good at education, right? Their education is so much better than the United States of America, okay? And it's really interesting because on the one hand, he recognizes that. On the other hand, he doesn't recognize how they got there or why they're there and why America is not there, okay? If Donald Trump was truly interested in fixing America's awful education standing in the world, he would probably look a little bit deeper. He would maybe scratch the surface, okay? I tweeted about this yesterday. Donald Trump, or 2 days ago, Trump talking about shutting down the Department of Education while hyping up Norwegian and Chinese education is insane. These countries have well-funded public education systems. I know you're covering important stuff right now, but how are people making videos that get 160,000 views about you going to jail? Why is this a thing? Some guy named Nuxanor got in my feed. It's so weird. Happy Valentine's. Wait, what? People are making videos about me possibly going to jail? Oh, because of my pro-Palestinian commentary? Is that what it is? I'm going to go to jail for being pro-Palestine? Love that. Isn't that the lolly pedo guy? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, it could happen. I think it's wild to fantasize about that and act like that is a good thing. But, you know. Like, do you want that to happen? That's the question you should be asking, I guess. What if they want you to go to a cool Norwegian prison? Yeah, I don't think so. Anyway, some anime YouTuber is mad at you. It's not just an anime YouTuber, because I have a lot of friends in the anime YouTube community. It's a lolicon pedo enjoyer who has a VTuber avatar. And he is unimaginably pro-Israel. Shockingly. Shockingly, he is incredibly pro-Israel and has lost his fucking mind. You make the wildest enemies. It's just so consistent, though. It's so incredibly consistent. What the fuck? Why is my goddamn alerts broken? That's so annoying. Anyway, Are you the anti-pedo spray? Yes, I am the anti-genocide and anti-pedophile, preeminent anti-genocide, anti-pedophilia content creator. One of the other or both. It depends. If you fit in the category of someone who is maybe agnostic to genocide or agnostic to sex crimes and pedophilia, okay, sometimes both, oftentimes both, as a matter of fact, you probably are not going to have a good time here, okay? You are going to hate me, it seems. Anyway.
To diminish the agency. Now, anything to get rid of the Department of Education would have to be passed by legislation in Congress. But President Trump is expected to push leaders up here on Capitol Hill for just exactly that. Tony?
Reagan tried it, couldn't do it. Maybe Trump will accomplish it. Caitlin, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We'll keep following it. Other developments in Washington, mass firings of federal workers are underway this morning, part of the Trump administration's effort to dramatically cut back on the government overall. The firings could only number in the hundreds of thousands. And in another dramatic change, the president is promising more tariffs, this time on any country that has a tariff on us. He says, basically, if they charge us, we're going to charge them right back. Nancy Cordes is at the White House with more on what all this means. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning, Tony. This can be confusing, so here it is in a nutshell. Currently,
National Institute of Health News. My girlfriend just told me that they just fired all of the staff scientists and senior postdocs within her branch of the Neuroscience Research Program Department. Sorry for spam. Last message about it. I mean, who needs neuroscientists, dude, at the National Institute of Health? That's not necessary research, dude. I don't understand. Why would you ever need that? The neuroscientist is the natural. Also, yes, I'll have you know, a neuroscientist is the natural enemy of a brainworm, okay? And considering that the HHS is now run by the worm in the brain, I suspect that many actions will be taken against those who want to eviscerate brainworms. Rand 940, thank you for the 10 community gifted subs. Are neuroscientists woke now? Yes. My lab lost R&D running last week and fired a couple hundred scientists working on a revolutionary new STD test system. It's, I mean, we already learned that with COVID. It's better if you don't test it, you know? If you don't test it, then it doesn't exist. Our dean keeps emailing students to contact congressmen saying our school is cooked without research funding. Wonder Gal 96, thank you for the fire gifted.
many countries place higher tariffs or taxes on U.S. goods than the U.S. imposes on theirs. President Trump is directing his advisors to now even think.
Guys, neuroscientists are bad because, one, they're anti-brainworm, okay, and that's an untenable position. And two, okay, and perhaps more importantly, they say stuff like, you know, blue chemical dye is probably not healthy to consume. Or gay and woke things like, we don't have enough research on whether or not blue chemical dye could actually help with any of your medical complications. When you hear stuff like that from a gay and woke neuroscientist, obviously, immediately, if you're a blue chemical dye kind of guy, you're going to go, okay, well, you're fired. Okay? Don't worry. I'm sure all the neuroscientists in Asmus chat are letting him know they were fired too. Yes. In between their guild trades that they're conducting in trade chat, they're talking about how they're losing their neuroscience research jobs.
Things up. He says it will mean more revenue for the U.S. government, but economists warn it could also lead to a global trade war and drive prices up here at home.
Whatever they charge us, we're charging them.
Announcing his new plan in the Oval Office, President Trump said no country will be exempt from his reciprocal tariffs.
This applies to everybody across the board.
The term reciprocal tariffs may sound dry, but they could affect the price of almost everything. For example, the European Union currently imposes a 10% tariff on imported cars. But the U.S. only levies a 2.5% tariff on their cars. That would change under Trump's plan. Though he says world leaders like India's Narendra Modi, who met with Trump yesterday, would be welcome to negotiate.
It's very hard.
There is something very funny about Trump doing reciprocal tariff policies. And like for cars, I kind of get it because it's like a part of our manufacturing capabilities right now, even though it is limited. Okay. And also part of the reason why part of the reason why other countries, other marketplaces simply don't buy our cars is, of course, to improve their own domestic manufacturing, to make sure that people are still buying local, but also because our fucking cars literally don't work on their roads, okay? Some of our cars are illegal to drive on European roads. Most of our cars, like the F-150, which is the most popular vehicle every single year, with the exception of last year, where RAV4, Toyota RAV4 actually outflanked the Ford F-150 pickup truck for the first time in, I believe, like multiple decades, okay? The Ford F-150 cannot be driven on European roads without a commercial driving license. What are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? Our cars have gotten increasingly larger and larger, okay? Its engine size is too large. It's too heavy. It does not abide by European safety standards, like woke and gay safety standards, such as pedestrian safety, okay? If your car is far too high, it makes it creates additional problems for pedestrians in walkable cities. Now, if you're an American, you're probably looking at me and going, the fuck do you mean? What's a walkable city? What the hell is a walkable city? Do you mean when you walk from the double wide parking lot spot that I parked my F-350 King Rancher into to walk over to the Walmart? Is that what you mean? Walkable cities? 15-minute cities? That's a part of the problem. America has never been invested in actually competing in other marketplaces and has enforced its dominance through tariffs and through this complicated global trade structure. That's the problem, okay? The Japanese were literally just dumping the F-150s. They were forced to purchase as a vassal state a shit ton of Ford vehicles. They're fine vehicles. It's just that you can't use them in Japan. What are they supposed to do? Now we're treating every country like we did Japan in the 90s when they were popping off too hard. Ugh. Anyway, the issue is if America was actually invested in real trade, they would try to universalize our safety standards and our regulations so that they could make a competitive product for other marketplaces. But that's not going to happen. Do you understand? So now we're just going to do what? We're going to force these countries to purchase these cars. Otherwise, we will dominate them or some shit. Like, it doesn't make sense. And I say this as someone who obviously, one, loves the UAW. Okay. Shouts out to the UAW. Loves that there is at least some semblance of manufacturing in this country that doesn't revolve around making murder weapons and finding new and unique ways to laser brown children overseas, okay? But the reality of the matter is those guys are just making whatever car that their bosses tell them to make, okay? It's not like they're designing the fucking cars. And even the designers are not designing the cars because this is this is a passion project or whatever. They're designing the cars in a way to make the highest level of profit. Mirage just walked by and said, engineers deserve all the money. It's kind of like how over here in Europe, most American cars that were on sale 20 to 30 years ago were retired earlier than usual because they were so crap compared to local manufacturers / Japanese / Korean ones. What are they going to do now? If they come again, they'll be thrown into the scrapyard within 15 years. Ford F-150 didn't lose to no dadgum Toyota, brother. You're lying. Yeah. One must ask. Ran 940. Thank you for the 35 community gifted subs. And Ave Satana. Thank you for the 10 gifted subs. Okay. Peace. All right. We'll do. Anyway, it just doesn't make any sense in terms of trade. It doesn't make any sense. It's so stupid. It's so ridiculous. We're just like we're being bullies. In a way, it's no different than the NATO situation. Well, I guess it's even worse than the NATO situation. Demanding that other countries put more into their own defense, like a higher percentage of their GDP into their defense, and fingers crossed, purchase more American weapons, is a way to demand more in your extraction, is a way to extract more resources from your protection racket. Okay? Is reciprocal tariffs also include regulation a country has that restricts American companies? For example, banking regulations in Canada. Oh, fantastic. I think in order for countries to maintain some semblance of sovereignty and some semblance of autonomy, they are going to have to probably restrict trading with this wonderful nation and maybe find themselves in the hands of the global monster of manufacturing, China. Now, I don't know. I don't know if they'll do that. They probably won't. But it's crazy. If the World Bank and the IMF and their incredibly restrictive austerity implementations for the loans, the incredibly restrictive conditions they had on their loans, their lending structure, was awful for a lot of developing nations, and they found themselves in the hands of the One Belt, One Road initiative coming out of China because they were just offering a better alternative out there. There's a better way, there's a better pathway for European partners in trade as well.
To sell into India because they have trade barriers, very strong tariffs. We are right now a reciprocal nation.
Deutsche Bank warned this week that reciprocal tariffs pose additional upside risks to the inflation outlook. Trump claims the pain would be temporary.
Well, I think what's going to go up is jobs are going to go up, and prices could go up somewhat short term, but prices will also go down.
Billionaire Elon Musk and his children also met with Modi yesterday. In a virtual appearance at an international summit, Musk, who heads the Department of Government Efficiency, said he's working to eliminate not just jobs, but entire cabinet-level departments.
We do need to delete entire agencies as opposed to leave part of them behind.
As for a timeline for when reciprocal tariffs could take effect, the president's commerce secretary says that the research should be done by April 1st, and then it's up to Trump when exactly to enact any of the new recommendations. Nate?
All right, Nancy, thank you. Right now, we have CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady here right now to break down what these tariffs actually mean for your bank book. Good morning. Good to see you. So let's jump right into it. So how would this impact, us in the U.S. and when will it take effect?
Unfortunately, us pushing EU towards China narrative does not work. Both EU and China want to grow through exports. Both need an import economy as their partner. It simply does not work. That's also fair. But who knows, man? Who knows? China's got a lot of money. Maybe they'll unleash the treats. Access to the Chinese marketplace is safeguarded by the government. I doubt that they would change that structure, but yeah, the American treatlerites are an endless resource for every other country, including China. Okay, this is part of the reason why the One Belt, One Road initiative is so important for the future of China. They want to develop secondary markets so that they can make up for the loss of access to the American treatlerite consumer base. We've we've constructed the world economy by weaponizing our trade deficits through abusing exorbitant privilege. But what happens if everyone joins BRICS? I mean, that's not I don't think BRICS is like a real alternative. Okay. Can we just sell California to the Dutch yet? China should move on from the consumerist model to a degrowth model. I doubt that that's going to happen. That's crazy. Chinese people don't spend like someone from the EU or NA, so opening up foreign goods more, that's also not true. They do. But this second part of what you're explaining is correct. Opening up foreign goods more, so then they already do would starve their own companies is correct. That's the one thing that you're not wrong on in terms of. No, Chinese people are consumers, okay? China in many weird ways is very American coded, okay? They have affordable public transit, okay, that is readily available, but they also have mega cities with massive highways and a lot of fucking cars. I try to explain this to people and they don't understand. China is not like Japan at all in terms of like people constantly being heavily regulated and presenting themselves in a certain way in public, for example. They are chaotic in a very similar way to how Americans are, okay? They love their treats, just like Americans do. There are a lot of similarities between Americans and Chinese culture in that regard. They're hyper-consumerist. It's just that they're held together by a competent administrative state. Okay. Your chat has never met a Chinese person or visited China, I swear. Yeah, I mean, yes, they probably never visited China. I've never visited China either, but aren't they also way less individualistic? I mean, yes, I think like there's obviously a lot of cultural remnants that play a role here, but I think what's more important is the actual government, is the way that the government operates. It's not that bad, but it's boring as hell. We do buy a lot. We just stopped buying Western goods. Why buy from countries that actively demonize China? We buy locally now, and the products are much more competitively priced. Top G is back with another banger. Do you think the Chinese will need to start thinking about financializing their economy? I hope not. I mean, it's already led to a bunch of issues, a bunch of bubbles that they had to deal with recently. I think financialization of the economy is suicide. Look at the United States of America. You know what financializing your economy does? First of all, it's the exact opposite. Even if there is any degree of financialization, it is done with a broader vision from the government. Okay. But as far as financialization in the United States of America goes, virtually every single company that was tasked with manufacturing, even those within the defense sector, even, incredibly important companies like Boeing, have turned into banks. Okay. That's what happens when you financialize every sector. Every single company turns into a fucking bank. They don't make moves. They don't actually manufacture new goods. They don't actually invest enough in R&D in terms of like actual new competitive products or things that actually improve people's lives. Okay. Faster planes or whatever. They use all of their resources, all of the existing additional resources that they have to make financial manipulation, to engage in financial manipulation so that they can keep increasing their stock prices. That's it. That's what happens when you turn into a bank. And obviously, in that process, there are a lot of cost-cutting initiatives that come in. There's a lot of harm done to the labor sector in the process because you're engaging in layoffs. Okay? And then a decade later, the outsourcing of manufacturing and the gutting of the regulatory state play a role in planes fucking falling out of the sky sometimes. And then we just go, how did this happen? Anyway.
That's the clarity that we all want, right? So let's think about some of the countries that could be impacted. India, Brazil, EU. What products do we get from them? So India, agriculture, textiles, medical devices. Brazil, petroleum, beef, coffee. And then the EU, wine, a key ingredient in weight loss drugs, cars like Audi and Mercedes. If the U.S. puts a tariff on these countries that already tax us, you will see prices potentially go up on those items. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, people will finish your thought, and then I have a follow-up.
So in terms of when this could take effect, as Nancy said, right, potentially April 2nd, these could go into place. It takes about 6 to 9 months for you to see that happen at the stores. Depends on the industry. It depends on the inventory. But we have a very delicate inflationary environment. This could escalate into a trade war. Could also be a negotiation tactic.
Yeah, I was jumping the gun on the counterpoint here because people care about rising prices, but they don't feel them as much if their wages are going up. So I think a question is, how does this affect businesses, and could it lead to more jobs somehow?
Potentially. So the idea is that we buy more goods from these countries than they buy from us. The president is hoping that these tariffs could encourage these countries to buy more from American companies. That means more demand. That means more need for American jobs. So
I like that there is no way to be actually competitive in the global marketplace with China, for example. So on the one hand, both the EU and the United States of America are desperately trying to push out Chinese goods from their marketplaces. And then the United States also simultaneously is turning around and saying, you got to buy our shit instead. It is the same principle in every facet of the foreign policy that we push for, okay? No more natural gas from Russia. You got to get it from us. Oh, do you need to build new plants to take on American LNG? Sucks to suck. You got to fucking do it, bitch, okay? You can't buy cheap affordable Chinese electric vehicles. It's going to destroy your own domestic manufacturing, okay? Which is true. It will, right? But then also simultaneously, You need to buy our shit instead. Oh, does it not work on your roads? Will it destroy your roads that were built in like the 14th century? Sucks to suck. Oh, does an F-150 not fit on your narrow Italian streets? Sucks to suck. You have to buy it. I don't care where you put it. You can dump it in the ocean for all I give a shit. You have to buy it by force. It's great. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. Seems great. So many American cars are literally illegal in Japan due to safety. Yeah. But hey, guess what, dude? We're the big bully on the global stage. So we will make sure that they are no longer illegal. Oh, do you have any sovereignty? Oh, you thought you had sovereignty. Oh, you thought you were a competent government working to a certain degree at the behest of the citizenry. Guess what, dude? Fuck your regulatory bodies, okay? Look at what we're doing to our regulatory state. Now your regulatory state will be gutted too. Great. What happens if they say no? There are very few alternatives, so I don't know. I don't know. I think a part of this bargain that holds it together is obviously the American consumption machine, which is an incredibly valuable market. That's why while TikTok is marginal in terms of like the American market in terms of numbers is marginal for TikTok, it's massive for how much money is being made, how much revenue is being generated. TikTok is a great example of this. The American market by raw numbers is what is it like? By raw numbers, in terms of people using TikTok in the United States of America, was 170 million. It's actually a still a decent percentage of the overall base of TikTok consumers. I believe it's around 10%. Okay, probably a little bit higher. Now, if you lose 10% of your user base, that's a pretty significant. That's a pretty significant number of people, but it's not like dire. But what you're actually losing is the revenue, okay? Because despite making up, let's say, 10 to 20% of the base of users, the American marketplace makes up a pretty significant chunk of the revenue for TikTok. Because America has a lot of money. America is a very wealthy country. That's why even the average American in comparison to the average average European person has a shit ton more money in the global marketplace.
You could see something like that happen. Unfortunately, these companies, they don't know when this is going to happen. It takes investment. It takes clarity to make that investment. And I will note, the last time we did see industries lose some jobs because of these higher prices.
All right, interesting. All right, Kelly, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Now to a number of sudden resignations of the top federal prosecutors who allege the Trump administration is playing politics with the Justice Department.
It's not that we have less money. We are much less likely to spend. No, that's not true. I don't think Europeans just are much less likely to spend. I think Europeans also have much less money. Like when you look at the entirety of the when you look at like the English economy, right? Like their living standards are fairly decent, I would say. Having said that, however, if you were to put like the average Euro poor living in England, okay, next to the average Ameripoor living in fucking Alabama, the average Ameripoor living in Alabama has infinitely more wealth in the eyes of the global marketplace. Like, not even a comparison. The living standards for the average Euro poor is still better than the living standards for the Ameripoor, for sure, because there's like at least some semblance of safety nets, healthcare, you know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff that the government takes care of. Yeah, the average wage in England outside of London is lower than Mississippi. Yeah, for sure. For sure. But in terms of the wages in the UK in comparison to the US is significantly lower when it comes to most jobs. Exactly. But what you fail to consider in that equation is, in the eyes of international trade, it doesn't matter. Your living standards don't matter. It's negligible. It's irrelevant. So if you're just looking at pure money, like if you're looking at different marketplaces to enter and selling to different marketplaces, yes, the American marketplace is still, by and large, the most important marketplace out there. Americans have a lot more buying power, regardless of the dire economic situation, regardless of the insane levels of wealth and income inequality in this country. Okay?
It all happened after the interim U.S. attorney in Manhattan was ordered to drop the corruption case against New York Mayor Eric Adams. That prosecutor, Danielle Sassoon, chose to resign instead. She alleges that Adams agreed to help the president carry out his immigration agenda in exchange for the case to be dropped. Adams' attorney denies that. Scott McFarland has more on this story. Scott, good morning to you. So this is raising a lot of big questions about Donald Trump and the DOJ.
You frog seething? Okay, before we get to this unlimited corruption, let's watch the Caspian Report. How the UK is becoming a third world country.
One of the wealthiest urban areas in the world. Its economy is worth roughly £508 billion, which equals $52 billion. If it were an independent state, London would rank as the 22nd largest economy in the world, precisely above Argentina and Sweden. However, London's prosperity and that of southeast England is atypical for the country. This small area makes up nearly half the UK's GDP while having about a third of its population. If one were to amputate London's output, it would reduce British living standards by 14%, just enough to slip ahead of the US state of Mississippi. Yeah, the UK has seen better days. The last 10 years have been particularly tough. Real disposable income, which is income after taxes and benefits.
What? Buying $202 shirts on Shein, it has nothing to do with having or not having health insurance, and Americans have $200 to blow because $200 is just never going to buy them a surgery or have any other use for it. When you are a poor American, except spend it. What? I don't think that is a reasonable bargain. I will never advocate for that. I think it's far better for Americans to have far better for Americans to not be so reliant on debt and have far less disposable income while simultaneously have all of their incredibly important needs met by the government. That is a big part of my advocacy. Yes, the chatter was agreeing with me. Having lived in California, Hong Kong, London, and Northern England, my quality of life was actually best in Northern England, surprisingly.
Has remained almost unchanged. The cost of goods and services has gone up. Compared to a decade ago, people can buy less with their income. Meanwhile, productivity is low.
Well, yeah, I don't think that it's because $400 won't buy you good healthcare here. There's nothing to spend it on but dumb shit like TVs. I don't think it's a one-to-one comparison. I think the government doesn't circulate money better in this country in terms of taxes. That's for sure. Taxes that would then fund very important social safety nets, because if you fund social safety nets and the government controls them, at most it is going to be a depressive force on the profits that the private sector can make, and at best it would eradicate the private sector in its entirety. That means a big part of that GDP is going away, okay? Health insurance is the greatest example of this. I talked about it extensively with the Luigi Mangione saga, if you recall. Healthcare, for-profit healthcare insurance in this country is a ginormous part of the American output, okay? American wealth. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people hired by this industry. And also on top of that, there are trillions of dollars of wealth being generated. Now, how is that money being generated is the important question to ask, okay? It plays a fairly significant role in our GDP. Why? It should not exist. How does it make this money? It makes this money by playing the role of a shitty mediator that actually increases cost across the board. Cost on a cost that is carried over to the consumer, and its lack of interest in actually meaningfully tackling the cost on the pharmaceutical side, because it has no interest in actually lowering prices on the purchasing side. As a matter of fact, sometimes it directly owns the pharmaceutical providers, or at least has an additional revenue opportunity on the pharmaceutical side with the pharmacy benefit managers, as we've talked about as well. So it is not in the interest of the private healthcare industry to have the federal government regulate this in any way, or even create a competitive product in any significant fashion, because that would ruin their reason of existence. That would ruin the way that they make money. Okay, GDP don't go up fixing a pothole. It does go up if you blow a tire. What's that meme of the two economists that talk to one another? One economist, what is it? One economist takes a shit in a bag, okay, and then sells it to the other economist, and the other economist. It's like a classic meme. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. It's a classic. Oh, here. Okay. Here it is. Two economists are walking in a forest when they come across a pile of shit. The first economist says to the other, "I'll pay you $100 to eat that pile of shit." The second economist takes the $100 and eats the pile of shit. They continue walking until they come across a second pile of shit. The second economist turns to the first and says, "I'll pay you $100 to eat that pile of shit." The first economist takes the $100 and eats the pile of shit. Walking a little more, the first economist looks at the second and says, "You know, I gave you $100 to eat shit. Then you gave me back that same $100 to eat that shit. I can't help but feel like we just both ate shit for nothing." "That's not true," responds the second economist. "We increased the GDP by $200. So a lot of the stuff that you consider to be completely unproductive and maybe directly at odds with the flourishing of the working class of the United States of America are actually making a lot of money. A number is going up somewhere. The healthcare industry is profoundly important for our GDP, even though it should not exist. Think about that. So much of the American economy is geared towards creating unnecessary middlemen. Unnecessary middlemen that will have pay stubs. Unnecessary middlemen that will drive up the cost. This hypothetical excludes the existence of coprophile economists. This is erasure. Okay. I say I am not even against inefficiency in the economy. Okay. As long as it is at the behest of the overall public good. Okay. Inefficiencies such as maintaining the same labor force while improving the work conditions to maximize their efficiency and make them do less work so they have more free time. Okay? This is inherently anti-capitalist. This concept is inherently anti-capitalist. What do you mean? You're going to work 2 hours instead of 8 and get the same output and get paid the same? This makes no sense. If someone can do 2 hours, if someone used to do the same work for 10 hours and now is doing the same exact work for 2 hours, that means you can eliminate 5 jobs. You can eliminate 4 other people's jobs and then make that one guy do the job of 5. Inefficiency is universally bad and automation is essential to human development. What? Correct and based economist. I agree. That's why we must embrace automation. Inefficiency is universally bad and automation is essential for human development. I do not have a problem. Okay, bro, you are on the consumption leaderboard. You definitely chase it. Okay, once again, people I don't think understand what my personal worldview is. So they mistake it for what they think it is, and then they think it is at odds with what I'm with what I'm advocating for or the way I live my life. Okay, I do not have an issue with consumption. I am not anti-consumption. There has never been a point in my career where you can point to me saying consumption is bad. Okay, as a matter of fact, I've often talked about the most successful mechanism of invisible control that neoliberalism has applied to its completely servile domestic population. It is consumption that keeps people occupied. It is consumption that makes people feel like their lives are better. If you want to understand why Americans are so servile, it's because they have burger. It's because they have gun. It's because they have burger gun. It's because they have cheap TV. Okay? And if you understand that any government has to, at a base level, after giving their citizens basic material needs for them to thrive, that they also have to keep them preoccupied and to a certain degree sedated, then you understand that consumption is a very successful way of doing that. if you don't actually offer these goods for people to purchase and to keep them preoccupied, you end up having riots over not being able to get fucking coffee beans, okay? It's not because I'm a selfish hedonist that I advocate for this, okay? Inefficiency is bad, law. Inefficiency is bad. Inefficiency, the chatter isn't wrong. Inefficiency isn't bad, but it has to be defined. Output input means nothing without context. Output shouldn't be profit. It should be good. That's the difference between the capitalists and the leftists. Yes, inefficiency of that sort, if you set the standard of what it means for inefficiency, then yes. Because one can also make the argument that hyper-efficient economics from a capitalist perspective it requires the gutting of the existing labor force, which then means that the purchasing power goes down, which then means that the existing labor force does not have an opportunity to make meaningful wages. And yes, if you compare it to like a Sudanese person, the American purchasing power is significantly fucking higher. But year over year, their purchasing power goes down as well, and their quality of life goes down as well. That is inherently inefficient, unless you are hyper-focusing on short-term profits. That's it. Short-term profits for a select few. Inefficiency is bad, said the middle manager whose boss, another middle manager, was telling him to cut costs by laying off 4 more workers and dividing the work between the rest at no extra pay. Exactly. I don't know why, but the first thing that comes into mind when seeing that title is the racist quote I see online, import the third world, become the third world. Is it true? Yeah, no, that's just like a completely pure idealistic racist nonsense. Import the third world, become the third world is idiotic. There is no material difference between a person that was born in the third world and a person that was born in fucking London, okay? The only difference is one has access to more goods and a better education system and more amenities than the other. There is nothing that makes people different than one another aside from their, spawn point. Your spawn point dictates your future in pretty significant ways. And you can recognize this by looking at your own neighborhoods. Okay? I'll use not the example of the South Side of Chicago, but instead a white example so that racists can understand this as well. Do you think that if you are born into a relatively wealthy or maybe an upper middle class family in a Connecticut neighborhood and have access to the best education and also don't have to fucking work while you're going to school and don't ever have to worry about your finances, do you think that spawn point is going to offer more opportunities to you than the white child born into a fucking family that was already crippled by fentanyl after losing their goddamn jobs in the mine in West Virginia? Do you think that there is something fundamentally different about the white child born in a West Virginia suburb than the white child born in Connecticut? Well, J.D. Vance thinks so. He thinks that the Appalachian mind is simply primitive, but I don't, okay? I don't. I understand that there is unlimited potential all around the world, and it is up to us to unlock it. If you want to think about it with this like technocratic approach, because many of you European social democrats especially love that shit, you can think about it from that perspective. Okay? Hot take here, don't ban me, dude, but I think if jobs are automated, wouldn't that cause some sort of Darwinist selection of the population? I might be wrong. It's a new thought. What? I mean, Darwinist theories don't work under capitalism. You're not actually creating a structure where the fittest survive. You're actually creating a structure where the poor die at a higher clip than the rich. That's it. Social Darwinism is the exact opposite of what I was talking about just now, that there is nothing inherently or intrinsically different between people born to genuinely different circumstances.
One of the lowest of any major economy, and housing has become nearly unaffordable, with the UK holding the record for the highest number of homeless people in the developed world.
Yeah, I wonder why perhaps the London economy has something to do with that. Okay? And that is true. Okay? The reason why London experiences incredibly high rates of homelessness and also pretty decently high rates of poverty and crime is because the housing market is dog shit. And when the housing market is dog shit, the London economy, in theory, thrives. Okay? The cost of the average house goes up. Higher number. Better looking on the graph. But people suffer as a direct consequence of that because they get priced out of the housing market.
The cause for these issues is rooted in past political decisions. Britain has slumbered and stumbled its way through a number of setbacks. Now, the crisis has become endemic with no quick fix in sight. When you think about it, it's
because to get a good career in the UK, you were pretty much funneled into London. I mean, this is an identical issue to what Japan is facing as well in terms of its own economy. Okay? Relative wages are highest in big city centers, and that causes people to internally migrate. That is the same everywhere. It's the same in America too. It's the same in Canada. It's the same virtually everywhere. Well, with the exception of countries that don't treat housing as a speculative asset, but instead thinks about housing as a necessity for survival.
ironic. The UK was the first country to industrialize. Now,
it happens in every developed country except for one. Don't make me say it. Don't make me say it. There's another country that is in the heart of Europe that also has been able to overcome these issues. That country is, of course, Austria, at least Vienna. But that's because 65% of their housing is public. There's a couple other countries that also have been able to overcome these issues despite developing, but their understanding of like a land lease agreement is diametrically the opposite of Western capitalist nations. But in terms of developed nations, in terms of developing nations that resemble developed nations in many of their big cities like China, you know, it's all a matter of what the government thinks of housing. It's entirely dictated by what the role housing plays.
it stands to become the first to deindustrialize. Seen from a larger angle, Britain's economy is on a downward trajectory. Prices are rising too fast. Just recently, housing prices rose by more than £2,200 in a month. Unfortunately, this wasn't widely reported in the media. Looking at things from all angles is what we do, and Ground News provides us with invaluable insights to do exactly that. That's why we reached out to them to sponsor this video. In fact, reading this on Ground News, I can see only 10 sources covered it, which goes to show how overlooked this subject is. What's more, less than 10% of the outlets were from government sources. One might suppose governments don't want to talk about complications at home. Now, our type of content is not really suitable for YouTube. The algorithm deems it too controversial, and so many of our videos go without monetization. That's why we rely on sponsors to keep producing these videos. We've personally used and worked with Ground News for years, and they've stepped up every time we needed support. In fact, we have our own feed on Ground News. Here, you get breaking news on geopolitics and even blind spot stories that the media isn't covering. Our missions align, so I encourage you to check it out at ground.news/Caspian. I recommend subscribing to the Vantage plan. Our link gets you 40% off. Keep in mind that by subscribing, you are directly supporting our channel. Not long ago, Britain was considered one of the world's most prosperous nations and a prime destination for skilled professionals seeking to advance their careers. Today, not so much. The state is under incredible socio-economic strain, more so than people realize. 3 back-to-back geopolitical shockwaves have left it with a colossal debt.
Why is this Bolshevik scumbag still free? That's amazing. Dude, Euro chatters are so funny. I don't think I've ever been called a Bolshevik as a pejorative. I'm going to give you points for an old way of, an old terminology. Czarist chatter, yeah. Gary's Economics, a former trader from London, describes the problem perfectly. Can I post a link to his video? Do you know Gary's Economics? No. Here.
And then
he's also made Gary's Mod. Wait, really? He's about to call you a pinko? That is a Using Bolshevik as a pejorative is so old school that saying you're a pinko commie would be infinitely more modernized as an insult in comparison, even though that is also a very old school term to use. Okay? One is like half a century old. The other is like a century old. More than a century old. Anyway. What about the hukou system in China? Doesn't that exacerbate generational poverty and class division, or is it good because everyone is in a home? Curious on your take here. I've talked about the hukou system in China before. I think they're looking to modernize and reform it at this point as well. But I'm not, it is certainly very restrictive. What is this? Why are you adding Little Bear and me? If not as pejorative, then it would be accurate-ish.
Series, Understanding Wealth Inequality and the Economy. And we're going to explain why economists don't talk about wealth inequality. Okay, so in the first two videos in this series, we explained firstly, what is wealth? Secondly, what is wealth inequality and why it is destroying our living standards and making people poorer. Today's video, we're going to explain if wealth inequality is so important, why is it that other economists don't talk about it? Okay, so the first reason economists don't talk about inequality is because of the way economics is taught at universities. So for those who don't know, I studied maths and economics at the London School of Economics for 3 years for my undergrad, and then I did a 2-year master's in economics at Oxford. So I've spent 5 years at elite economics departments learning economics, and I think it's important to understand the way that economics is taught at universities nowadays. So the first thing to say is, and I think this will surprise a lot of people, in economics departments we don't talk about the housing crisis. We don't talk about why housing is unaffordable. We don't talk about falling living standards. We don't talk about why wages are falling, why it's hard to get a good job, why big cities are expensive, why...
Yeah, that's woke pussy shit. That's why. You got to think of lines and graphs, okay? You have to make sure that in the field, the entire study of economics, you can never actually think of human beings as human beings. You have to think of them as widget makers at the widget factory, okay? Because if you realize that, I don't know, like productive output and economic efficiency implies mass layoffs, for example, at the widget factory, if you start thinking about the people and their disposable income, their lives, their dreams, their children's futures, all of a sudden you're going to start arriving at a very gay and very woke conclusion that perhaps is not the best possible thing to do. Okay, they're economists, not sociologists. Okay, I'm just saying that it's a silly way to approach the problem. China says U.S. should lead Trump's proposed arms control effort. President Trump said China and Russia should have their military spending and limit nuclear weapons. You first, China said. Great. It's never going to happen.
Things like energy and food are increasingly expensive. These kind of big economic problems of our time are basically not discussed at university. So what do we do at university? The main thing is
Yeah, but the point of the graphs is so you can think objectively and make rational decisions. Yeah, the problem is those are not rational decisions, okay? Is the point of a government or a social contract to improve everyone's lives, to improve the collective good, okay? Or is it to make sure that lines are constantly going up on a fucking graph? Yes, if you think that lines should constantly go up on a fucking graph and you believe in permanent growth of that sort, okay, then you arrive at this problem. And it's so funny because economists are wrong all the goddamn time. And then we never regard it in the same vein as like zodiac signs. We just like go, oh, well, I guess there was some issue. There was some fundamental problem that we didn't see, but it's okay. We'll just keep applying it over and over again. You know what it reminds me of? Okay. You know what it reminds me of? I've been watching Orb, right? And I think the way that capitalism and the way that we literally abide by capitalism being the norm reminds me of the fucking geocentric model in the anime Orb. And the way that so many supposed scientists, whether because of repression from the church or because of their own sunk cost, right, into this wrong model of thinking, chose to overlook an alternative vision. okay, and arrive at the goddamn truth. It is literally the same shit. Orb is an analog for capitalism. Instead of the church, we now have, an entire system designed around constantly seeking profit. And as everything is falling apart, as everything falls apart, as the previous models that we've designed that are beautiful keep failing over and over again, people still turn around and go, we just got to go back to the drawing board. It's fine. Let's not evolve our thinking at all. Let's not look outside of the pre-existing confines. It's just too scary. No alternative visions here, okay?
Do maths. So economics nowadays is a very, very heavily mathematized subject. If you don't have a very good maths A-level, you basically can't even get into university to do it. And then when you get into the university, it's just very, very, very heavily mathematical. And once you go into postgrad especially, it's extremely phenomenally mathematical. And it's not easy maths. You're doing kind of a lot of algebra.
Marx made the observation, which is true in modern economic theory, that vulgar economists ignore the social relations that underlying the capital-labor relation. It is the organization for profit and property rights that vulgar economists ignore when discussing inequality or productivity.
A lot of simultaneous equations. But basically, it's a maths subject at this point. And it's important to say that the maths is not easy. So I had a maths and economics undergrad, and I was very good at maths as a kid. But then when I went to do my postgrad at Oxford, even though I was very good at maths, I found the maths quite difficult. And if you want to succeed, if you want to get good grades, you really, really have to spend a lot of time memorizing the maths, basically. And the context for this maths is they basically build a model, like a model economy, and everything affects everything else. So if we cut the interest rate a bit, what does that do to GDP, for example? Or if people suddenly start spending less money, trying to save more, what does that do to inflation? This kind of thing. If the government suddenly raises taxes, how does that affect the economy? And you build this kind of mathematical model. It's like a toy model, like a kind of game in a way. We raise this a little bit, that falls, this thing rises. And that's the kind of model that is basically used in modern economics. But of course, when you build a model, you can't include absolutely everything that exists in the economy. You have to make some simplifications. Some things will be included, some things will not be included. And the models which we study at universities nowadays, one of the big simplifications is that there is no inequality in the model. In fact, it's more than just that there is no inequality in the model. There is only one person in the model. So these models are what they call representative agent models. So rather than looking at 6 or 7 billion people in the world, or like 66 million people in the UK, or 300 million people in the US, they say, to make the model simpler, we are just gonna look at one representative person. So the average person in the whole economy. So all you care about is averages, right? You're just looking at one average person. And of course, if we change the distribution, if I take some wealth from you and give it to Bill Gates, or if I take some wealth from Rishi Sunak and give it to you, that changes the distribution, but it doesn't change the average. So basically, once you build this model, which only looks at the representative agent, which is the average, which is the aggregate, it's not only that there is no inequality in the model, there is not even any possibility for inequality in the model. These are models of averages, these are models of aggregates, which is why when modern economists who've been to these elite universities think about the economy, they tend to think about them in terms of averages or aggregates, so that they're obsessed with the big aggregate measurements of the economy. For example, GDP is of course the classic one, unemployment, inflation, central bank interest rates, level of government spending, level of government taxation. These are things which you can measure on an aggregate economy, but they're nothing to do with how is one person affected versus another person. As soon as you take a model and you make it representative agent, a model of the average person, this model can't say anything about distribution. It can't say anything about this group of people is winning, this group of people is losing. We can't say anything like that in these models. So I think this is really interesting, right? Because if you want to be like an influential economist in the world of policy or academia, you are going to have a PhD, right? So you're going to have 3 years undergrad, 1 year, I did 2 years master. You're going to be doing a PhD for like 3, 4, 5 years. In the US, a PhD is like 7 years. You're going to have to do like some postdoc work, and then you're going to, if you're...
You are indoctrinated into the structure, and you have an almost religious zealotry associated with defending capitalism in this process. You are indoctrinated into a pre-existing model, the one that dominates the planet, as the only way to continue. Okay? That's it. That's what it is. And I'm not like abolish college, it's bad for you, don't learn, don't read type of person. But yes, there is not a lot of diversity in terms of the readily available economic models out there beyond capitalism. The most, like, I guess, quote unquote, progressive or woke version of this that you can get at the entry level is Keynesian economics. That's it. And that is still firmly within the confines of capitalism. It's crazy. No alternative vision unless you go beyond, go beyond the introductory courses and specifically focus on that. Post-Keynesian and MMT are the most progressive schools nowadays. Yeah, but even then, well, first of all, I don't think that modern monetary theory works for countries outside of countries like the United States of America. And secondly, it still doesn't matter because it doesn't address the root cause of the inconsistency or the contradiction baked into the current system. Okay? Like, I'm not the type of person who's like, oh, dude, this is bullshit. It's astrology or whatever. A modern monetary theory would never work or something like that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply stating that, well, one, you need to be a hegemonic power with sovereign currency. And two, more importantly than that, it still does not address the root cause of the problem.
Lucky to become a junior professor. So like by the time you reach a point that you are like influential in economic policy terms, you've been studying these models for like 15 years, like something like that. And the fact that these models don't include any distribution, don't include any inequality, that doesn't explicitly say we don't think.
This is so funny. Even in my sociology masters, we didn't talk about Marx as a part of the curriculum once. Yeah, because he was the curriculum. Only a political economy class I took included his text, and that was mostly to dismiss him to move on to Austrian economist bullshit. I think a sociology major saying in our sociology master's education we didn't talk about Marx is really funny because it's all Marx. Even if they don't say that it's Marx, it's still all Marx.
Inequality is important. But what does it do to a person who has devoted most of their life to the study of economics? That study has consisted of 10, 15 years of very difficult mathematical analysis, mathematical manipulation, of very difficult, very complicated mathematical models with no inequality in them. Like, I think this is a very effective way to subconsciously convince, almost subconsciously brainwash a person into believing that inequality doesn't matter. So you never come out and explicitly say like...
Okay, he took 7 minutes to explain that you get indoctrinated to a way of thinking if you get a PhD in economics that basically undermines the people that you're talking about in these economic models. That is crazy. I mean, this seems like a great channel. You guys all love him, but holy moly. Hassan, hate watching? No, I'm not hate watching at all. It's just like, I rarely ever encounter people that are bigger yappers than me. And this man he's done it. He's done the damn thing. I've officially found a bigger yapper than myself. The more important point was the data is not broken up by income.
Inequality doesn't matter. But you say like, here's a really, really complicated game. Here's a really, really complicated mathematical model that you're going to have to spend 15, 20 years of your life understanding in absolute fine detail. And you never even explicitly mention it, but the model doesn't have inequality in it. Doesn't have any distribution, doesn't have any space for that. So imagine you're that kid, you went in 18 years old, and then you spent 15 years of your life paying, locked in libraries, doing really difficult maths, with no inequality, no inequality, no inequality. And then, first of all, whenever you think about what's wrong with the economy, you're going to go back to the stuff you studied, right? And you're going to be like, well, maybe the problem is the interest rate is too high, or government spending is too low, or government taxation is too high. You're going to focus on these things that were in the model. You spent 20 years studying that model. Of course, you're going to want to provide answers that are from the model that you told, the model that you've been spending 20 years of your life studying. But if somebody comes to you and says, hey, maybe the problem is inequality, maybe the problem is distribution, how's that going to affect you emotionally? What's your emotional response to that going to be? I think you're going to get like a gut instinct, which is like, no, of course it's not. It's not that. Because if it was that, why the fuck have I spent 20 years studying something that's not even in the model? And also, you kind of have a bit of professional skin in this game, right? Because if this person is right with what they're saying, that the reason the economy gets worse and worse is because of growing inequality, then you have spent 20 years of your life studying something that has nothing to say about the biggest...
It's also not that you learn that inequality is irrelevant. You learn that it's good. I don't think that econ majors learn that inequality is completely irrelevant to their models. I think they learn that inequality is a necessary good. It's a necessary not even evil, it's a necessary good, because someone has to be coerced to take on these low-paying jobs. Someone has to be coerced, and the only possible method of coercion is that inequality. I think that it's a natural part of the paradigm, and that it's a good thing that it exists. And capitalism actually does a much better job than alternative models, because alternative models are never regarded as models that are incentivized through less alienation or higher degrees of autonomy over the means of production, but instead alternative models are advertised as force. Poor people either have to go into work and work these shit jobs because they have no other way of earning their keep and, you know, putting a roof over their heads. Okay. Or if that's not the case, in other structures, the only way you can get them to work is by gunpoint. Okay. Ironically enough, we do plenty of that gunpoint coercive aspect of labor, you know, sometimes by directly destabilizing the global south and other times by imprisoning decent chunks of our population. But that's neither here nor there, I guess. That's one of the other invisible aspects of capitalist cruelty. My boyfriend's an econ major, and he definitely thinks like this. So hard to have these conversations, especially when I was a poli-sci major and had a very different academic perspective.
Economic issue of our time. And you're a professor now at Chicago or LSE or at some fancy university, and you've got nothing to say about this. If this is true, you're in big trouble, right? So I think this is the current way that we teach economics is very, very powerful at convincing everyone who has a powerful voice in speaking about economics, in insisting, no, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it. But the end result is, most of these discussions are just, 10 people with elite university degrees talking to each other. So it's not that they even have to really deny somebody like me who says inequality is the problem. It's just never in the discussion. It's never in the discussion. It's a little bit like, who Copernicus is. Copernicus is this scientist who discovered that the Earth travels around the sun, and the Earth is just one of many planets traveling around the sun.
Oh shit!
And everybody accepts now that this is wrong.
He's literally doing the orb. He's doing the orb analogy. Yo, that's crazy. That is what I've been thinking about quite a bit, though, because I've been watching Orb. Obviously, he's not doing the orb analogy. He's doing the historical example of the real existing historical example of someone that undermined previous ways of thinking and that was completely shut out from the conversation. And those who carried the torch of this research were actively undermined and pushed away and murdered sometimes for developing the alternative ways of thinking, which ended up being the truth, by the way. Okay, what the fuck is Orb? You keep saying Orb. Orb is an anime about scientific development around the heliocentric model that under the watchful eye of the church. It's an anime that fictionalizes. It's an anime that fictionalizes basically the process. The manga is set in 15th century P Kingdom. People suggest ideas in opposition to the teachings of the C religion, which is Christianity, by the way, and it's the Inquisition, such as that the earth revolves around the sun, are considered heretics and are tortured or burned at the stake. Rafal, a child prodigy with an interest in astronomy, is forced by Hubert, a scholar and heretic, to assist him in his research for the movement of the earth theory. Okay? When Nowak, an inquisitor, finds a diagram drawn by Rafal showing a heliocentric model, Hubert claims responsibility and is executed. It's one of the things that Hubert says that I really love is that there are no wrong answers, right? Like a wrong answer can still lead you to the truth. And I think that's a wonderful way to approach both the rest of this anime, and I'm not going to spoil the rest of it. This is like first and second episode shit, so shut the fuck up, chatters. But yeah, it's about how difficult it is to shatter dogmatic approaches.
Right. But before him, everybody thought that the Earth was the center of the solar system. I guess it probably wasn't called the solar system at that time, but and everything traveled around, including the sun. And they had developed these really complicated mathematical systems of making that work. And the way that works is that all the other planets, they have to do like loop the loops and spinning around. It's the only way that it works to make sense. So all of these guys spent like their whole lives working out these complicated mathematical models of how everything goes around the Earth. And then a guy came and said, actually, things don't go around the Earth. And he was massively, massively attacked. Nobody wanted to accept it. Because you have all of these prestigious academics who've spent their whole life developing models of how things travel around the Earth. I think that's kind of basically where we are now. And If I was right in saying that these guys are just missing the big thing, what would you expect? You would expect, basically, that their models wouldn't work in the sense that they would constantly generate.
And it's funny because, like, it's obvious that the models don't work. If the models fucking worked, then we would not have a boom bust cycle. We would not have, like, great periods of economic downturn. Like, that's the other part of this, which is that, like, when economic predictions fail, and they do quite frequently, it's not exactly invisible either. You immediately feel the long-lasting, tangible impact. But because we are so dogmatic in our approach to capitalism, and it's such a wrong answers lead you to the truth, is that how you cope with getting absolutely cooked by the debate master Jordan Lee Peterson? Jesse Lee Peterson, yes. Anyway, I fear that in times of instability, a lot of people operate in cultish ways and approach the subject by reaffirming their loyalty to the previous dogmatic ways of thinking. Dude, I love Richard Wolff. He's great, but I'm not going to listen to him talk about the dialectic of work for an hour, dude. What are we talking about? Calm down, okay? This is already long enough. Many chatters already left because they said they were fucking bored. And now you want me to listen to Richard Wolff for an hour? Like, come on, lock in.
Incorrect predictions. And that is exactly what happens. These guys consistently generate incorrect predictions. So, you know, I've spoken about it many times on this channel, and I'll speak about it on the next video on the course. My job was to predict interest rates. And interest rates are, modern economists are basically obsessed with interest rates. Before 2008, they basically thought you could solve pretty much any modern economic problem by just making sure you get that interest rate right. And if you look at the way that our economists react to financial crises and economic crises, how do they?
Guys, once again, I'm going to repeat this, but I know better than you do on what carries the attention of 30,000 individuals, okay? Please stop. Like, this already is close to the boundaries of what is allowed on this broadcast. We've probably passed that boundary from my own estimation, okay?
They react to 2008, slash the interest rate. How did they react to COVID, slash the interest rate? How did they react to the inflationary spike after COVID? Rocket the interest rate up. This is basically where our economists sit at the moment, which is the way to deal with any economic crisis is to manipulate the interest rate. So the interest rate is like their key tool that they use, basically. And yet, what are their predictions for their own interest rate like? So I was a freshman interest rate trader from 2008 until 2014. In 2008, after the financial crisis, interest rates were slashed to zero in basically the whole of the rich world. Nobody predicted that. That was a surprise. And because they believe that low interest rates are very economically stimulative, they thought that rates would come up again the next year. They didn't. They then said in 2009, well, we're wrong this year, but rates will come up next year. They didn't. In 2010, they said rates go up in 2011. They didn't. And they continued to predict rates to go up every single year up until 2020, in the middle of COVID. Every single one of those predictions were incorrect. And then they finally said in the midst of COVID, now inflation is so low and will stay so low for so long, interest rates will never go up again. And interest rates immediately went up to 5-6%. So, you know, I know when I come out and say inequality is the big thing, and you live in a world full of economists that say, oh, the problem is things to do with the interest rate, things to do with levels of government spending, things to do with levels of taxation, I can sound like a bit of a quack, basically. Why is this guy saying the problem is one thing when all of these prestigious elite economists aren't mentioning it? Well, they're an educational system which never talks about it, and their predictions are constantly wrong. Whereas if you look at my predictions and, you know,
the same goes for foreign policy as well. If you're a constant naysayer of like American imperialism, the one time where your prediction might be incorrect, maybe let's say you're Noam Chomsky and you talked about the Khmer Rouge and said, hold on, let's wait for official data to come out. They'll constantly bring that up 60 years later, okay? Or let's say you're a dumbass Twitch streamer who said, Russia would never invade Ukraine. They'll constantly bring that up. You can be wrong all the time, on the other hand, as long as you are wrong alongside a pro-American imperialist position. The one time where you're wrong, on the other hand, against the American imperialist position, everyone will constantly look to that and constantly point to that to try and fucking undermine your very accurate assessment of the situation time and time again. Look no further than every single pro-Israel content creator, okay? Look no further than every single pro-Israel content creator. Every step of the way, pro-Israeli accounts that are in legacy publishers or that are in independent media have been wrong on every account. Their assessment was incorrect. Their analysis was totally wrong. And every single thing that they said about the potential, about the future of this conflict was incredibly wrong. I, on the other hand, was right every step of the way. And it's not because I have some crazy fucking future sight or whatever. It's because I was looking at previous actions. But it does not matter that they were wrong every step of the way, because they were wrong in the correct way. Okay? That's it. They were wrong in a way where it corresponded to the overall biases that a lot of other people are being socially conditioned into believing. Okay? That's it. The reason why I brought up this analogy, which is somewhat self-serving, is because the same thing happens in the field of economics. Okay? Gotta call this white guy wrong in our post-DEI? What are you talking about? Okay, man, calm down. Take an hour off, take a breather. The point is, economists are wrong all the time. They're wrong so consistently, but they're wrong within the confines of the permissible concepts. They're wrong within the confines of, they're wrong in favor of being pro-capitalism. And if you're wrong when you're pro-capitalism, then that's fine. It's, some people get stuff wrong all the time. They're a part of the in-group. Okay? That's it.
I correctly predicted interest rates after the 2008 crisis, but I've also correctly predicted things on this channel. If you go back and look at the first video on this channel, which we'll link in the description, I predicted in the beginning of COVID there would be an inflationary crisis, cost of living crisis, a huge spike in the stock price, the gold price, house prices, and a huge increase in inequality.
I'll give you one example, okay? Famines under socialist developing nations that want to abide by a socialist model are considered death campaigns directly caused to kill as many people as possible, okay? Regardless of what the material conditions in that country looks like, regardless of famines being a widespread problem at that point in time all around the globe, okay? It's never simply mismanagement. Although we have an abundance of food now with technological improvements, okay, there are still 14 million people that die due to famine-related issues every single year under a global capitalist structure. But why do those people die? It's not because of the system. It's not because of mismanagement when we have abundance. It's actually the individual's fault. Okay? Even when famine is man-made, deliberately created to kill people with the intent to kill people, if it is done by a capitalist superpower, then it's still not the same degree of immorality that is mismanagement under a socialist form of governance. Okay? Okay, it's not 14 million, it's 9 million every year now. My apologies. Well, at least in 2021 it was. In World of Wealth, 9 million people die every year from hunger. Okay? So what else is wrong? Science, history, academic fields filled with the smartest people in the world who have dedicated millions of hours to studying it. You sound like a right-winger denying experts. Wait, what? Brother, this is one field. And I'm saying that we have a dogmatic approach. There are alternative models out there, and we purposefully refuse to look at it out of the fear that it would undermine the current order of business in a way that is not dissimilar to previous dogmatic approaches to ways of thinking that we now understand is wrong. There's someone who is, there are a lot of powerful individuals who are slated to make money this way. They do not want to disrupt the existing hierarchy. The fastest growth in history of humanity were Soviet Union and China. Sorry, chatters, these are just facts. I mean, it's true. I'm also using analogies that pertain to your modern day existence that you can look at, because inequality exists everywhere. Okay? That's why I use the example of the neighborhood in West Virginia versus neighborhood in Connecticut. I'm using analogies that you can also comprehend. You can extrapolate from the existing inequality that you can see with your own two eyes, or inequality that you have experienced, okay, that you have lived through, and then look at a global paradigm because it works in a similar capacity.
All these things have happened. So I know it's easy to dismiss somebody, especially somebody who doesn't come from a rich, privileged background, saying the elites are wrong on this. But the elites are continually generating incorrect predictions. And I'm generating correct predictions here. So I think that what we have at the moment is essentially a broken education system in economics. But there's more to it than that. And the second reason why we don't speak about inequality in economics enough is because we have a system which aggressively takes anybody who is good at predictions out of the conversation. And to explain this, I want you to put yourself in the mind of a young 20, 21-year-old economics student, loves economics, loves the maths, studying it loads at an elite university. You graduate, whatever it is, magna cum laude or whatever, you're top of your class, and then you have to decide what you want to do with your life. So if you want to be in this conversation, if you want to be an academic, or if you want to be advisor to government, or if you want to work in public policy, you have to stay in academia. You can't just do an undergrad. You're going to have to do a master's. It's going to cost you a lot of money. You're going to do a PhD. You're going to have to work, spend money, locked in libraries. If you're lucky, you might start making money in your mid-30s. Or
9 million people dying out of 8 billion is nothing. If we're being nitpicky, is crazy, dude. It's not 9 million people dying because famine is still obviously fucking widespread and a problem that we haven't solved. It's 9 million people dying from hunger out of 8 billion at a time of abundance. Okay? This cannot be seen as anything but an act of sheer cruelty. The only problem here is that it is not profitable. Okay? It's simply not profitable. That's it. It's a logistics problem. That's a crazy way to approach 9 million people dying every year. That's incredible. If you can cast aside 9 million people dying every year, then honestly, you can agree to a lot of stuff, A post-Keynesian Marxist-leaning economist was said to be wrong about sellers' inflation where prices rise because of short-term profit-seeking. What if we're thinking about inflation all wrong? Isabella Weber's heterodox ideas about government price controls are transforming policy in the United States and across Europe. Your window is closing. No, it's not. You've read your last free article, you freeloader. 8 billion people don't die every year? Wait, what? Yeah, they don't. I agree. The entire population of the planet don't die every year. You've read your last free article, bucko.
Or you can go into the city. Not only does it pay you way, way, way more, but it gives you the opportunity to prove, look, I'm good because I can make predictions. And academia doesn't really care if you can make good predictions. So one thing which was really clear to me in my time in the city and my time in academia is if you're really, really good, you want to be in the city. Because if you're making good predictions, you will be recognized, you'll be paid, and everybody will know that is the guy over there who is right, because they're really aggressively analyzing who is the guy who's making good predictions. They're tracking that and they're paying that.
But if the field of economics is so bad and gets everything wrong, then why do corporations and institutions crave elite economists so much? Wait, what? Dude, I don't think you understand. They are operating within the confines of the pre-existing system. Yes, it's a self-reinforcing cycle. That's the entire point of his video, by the way. You misunderstood the entire point of the video from an econ expert, by the way. This is a person who does have the qualifications that you demand. And your reaction to this, your immediate antagonistic reaction to this is ironically the point that he's also making, which is that any kind of heterodox thinking is immediately cast aside by those who have obviously sunk a lot of time into thinking this way, and even those who have sunk no time into this way, but have basically decided through all of the social conditioning that this is the best possible fucking way of going forward. That's it. Also, I think you're mistaken economists for, quants or actual math majors who I think even have a more soulless approach to the process somehow.
Whereas when I went back to academia in 2017, I had, my first lecture at Oxford, and it was about interest rates. And I thought, this is really interesting, right? This is the thing which we've predicted really badly for 10, 15 years. This is the specific area I worked in. This is the area I'm an expert on. It's really interesting, right? If you are at elite university and you're studying something really important, and we've been wrong about it for at that time it was 10 years, now it's more like 15 years. This is interesting, right? This is like a kind of like an unsolved problem. Like if there's a thing that we're really bad at, you know, we can work out why we're bad at it. So I went to the professor, I said, why do you think we've been wrong about interest rates for 10 years? And he said, no, we always knew interest rates would stay zero, which is, you know, categorically wrong. And I went back and I showed him the data and I said, look, you've actually been wrong for 10 years. And he said, oh, that's interesting. You know, it never went anywhere. So what this shows is if you're good at predicting, which means you're good at working out why other people are wrong, the city will pay you. Academia won't even notice. It won't even notice. So what does this tell you about academia's ability to improve? Like if these guys are able to be wrong year after year after year after year for 10 years and not even notice, they're not going to improve. They're not going to improve, basically. So what you have is a situation where anyone who is good and wants to make money is aggressively paid to leave. And if you're good and you stay, even if you are able to correctly identify an area where everyone is consistently wrong, they don't really care and they're not going to listen. So what kind of person stays in academia when they know that if they're good, they will do much better and get paid much better leaving academia and going into finance? Basically people from rich families. It doesn't make sense to do that if you're not from a rich family. Like if you have the option, you know, I made millions of pounds in the city and, you know, that is what paid for this flat. And, you know, when my brother needed to buy a house, I helped him. My sister's trying to buy a house, I'm helping her. Like people from ordinary families cannot afford to make that choice if they're good. So the kind of people who stay in academia, you need to be either not good enough to get into finance, from a rich family, or basically a little bit mad. Like, and this is what happens. And
Gary's great, but his takes can be quite liberal. It's not like if we just got good economists to work with the government, then suddenly capitalism would be just fine. The system is far more self-replicating at a structural level to be changed in that way. I don't even know if he's actually saying that. Yeah, I think given that there is like some level of math involved in economics, I think one of the most damaging aspects of that has been this false reality that they also mistake economics with like hard science when it's very clearly not. That's it. People are like, well, it's confusing and it has math, so it must be a hard science. I don't really understand. Based on what he's saying about not needing / wanting to improve, it sounds like the idea that people not wanting to return to shopping carts, there's no reward for returning one, but what? It's neoliberalism that started pushing its view of the economy as some objective truth. Before that, it was way more diverse and everyone understood that it's mostly social science.
You have this system which kind of brainwashes people into saying inequality doesn't exist, it doesn't matter. Doesn't listen to people who are right and have ways who are demonstrably better in their predictions. And aggressively takes everybody who's half good out of the conversation.
I mean, I think one of the classic things that Noam Chomsky has talked about in terms of like the field of economics being designed around a lie is the notion of the rational actor principle, when there is a multi-billion-dollar industry dedicated to making irrational choices, making consumers engage in irrational choices to begin with. Like that in and of itself is a fairly simple way to attack the argument.
You go into finance. Obviously, then once you're in finance, you can make a lot of money making good predictions, but you're not allowed to speak publicly. So when I was a trader, I was making a lot of money betting that inequality would devastate living standards and keep interest rates low and push house prices up and push stock prices up and push inequality up further. But I wasn't allowed to say anything about these things. I had another point which I need to make on this. So the third reason economists don't talk about inequality is that pretty much all powerful, influential economists are quite rich. They're quite rich. They're generally from rich families. If they weren't from rich families, they probably wouldn't have stayed in academia. Economics has the worst social representation of like different social classes of any subject in the big American universities. So you have rich people who've gone in to study this subject. They probably don't need money, otherwise they would have gone into finance. And then they get paid to work for a think tank or work for a newspaper, and they themselves are quite rich and comfortable. The people who pay them are probably quite rich. They're heavily incentivized not to talk about inequality, right? It's in a quite obvious way, which is when somebody is rich and comfortable, they want to keep things the way they are. You know, when you talk about a crisis of inequality, it hurts most people quite badly because wealth tends to concentrate at the very top. But there's a sort of, you know, the top 1%, especially top 0.1%, does really, really well. But there's like 5 or 6% at the top that benefit from that. And these guys include basically any economist with a voice. So economists are wealthy. They don't want to talk about inequality. They've got a massive amount of skin in the game saying that inequality doesn't matter. 20 years, 30 years of education studying something which has nothing to say about inequality. They need this to not be a problem. Okay, so to conclude, why do economists not talk about inequality? Primarily, it comes from an education system which completely neglects to discuss it, which means that anyone who is involved in this discussion has studied for 20 years without ever talking about this. So it basically indoctrinates them into believing this is not a problem. And also they have a massive incentive in pushing that, because otherwise their education is a waste of time. It's rich people, it works for them and their class interests. Anyone who is really good at this is paid out of the game and paid to keep their mouth shut. So basically they're not going to fix this. So what does that mean? I'm filming this video at the back end of 2024. We had an election this year in the UK where the centre-left Labour Party beat the centre-right Conservative Party. And I think people often think that the reason that politicians do nothing about inequality is because they're representing their own interests. It's important to recognise there's kind of this whole class of slightly self-serving, slightly idiotic, very posh, very rich economists that are holding this up. And they're going to do nothing about inequality. Inequality will get worse and worse. Living standards for ordinary people will fall, and these people are not going to stop it. So the responsibility has to fall upon ordinary people themselves to stop it. When I first started talking about these things publicly in 2020, I was writing articles for newspapers. I wrote an article for The Guardian, and those articles are mainly being read by posh, quite privileged, quite rich people. And I was convinced that we were not going to get positive change by talking to the group of people who benefit from the growth in inequality. So I made consciously the switch to YouTube to try to convince ordinary people they need to do something. And that's why we're doing this channel. So I would encourage people to support, keep watching these videos. I think the next video we will do on this will be a little bit talking about my personal experience and how I came to become convinced that inequality was the problem. And then we'll keep doing...
I don't get all the Trump hate. I think his hair is pretty cool. Don't worry, we're going to get back to the Trump slop in a second. I just wanted to take this brief sidestep, but here is Tom Homan, the grotesque and certainly not corrupt New York Mayor Eric Adams. What's very funny is my first stream was a debate with a former mod of yours on the $15 minimum wage. He argued that it was economically illiterate. I responded by citing an economic study that won the Nobel Prize in economics 2 years later, showing increased minimum wages do not cause job loss as normal economics believed. Yeah, inevitably those models also find a way. It's just that it's too late, and most people just avoid looking at that even when it's too late. All right, let's get to Tom Homan. As you guys know, Eric Adams, Erik Turanoğlu, okay? Erik Adamoğlu, a Turkish national, was popped by the Southern District of New York for doing a quid pro quo, pay-for-play scheme and offering benefits to the Turkish government by envoys for getting cheap or subsidized first-class tickets from Turkish Airlines and also hotels in Istanbul. The New York of America, Istanbul. Okay. Now Eric Adams, being the corrupt cop that he is, was experiencing a little bit of scrutiny from the federal, or at least state, law enforcement apparatus. But thank God for him, Donald Trump, the Great White Hope, came in, and that man knows the art of the deal and forced the Department of Justice to drop the case on Eric Adams for his loyal cooperation with the administration's anti-immigrant agenda. Now, they kept saying it's not because Eric Adams is going to play ball with ICE in the sanctuary city of New York and allow ICE to basically cooperate with local law enforcement in direct violation of pre-existing laws in New York State. That's certainly not the reason, except here is Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, doing a morning show on Fox on how they're cooperating with the Trump administration.
It has been a very busy week.
The government is Turkifying at an alarming rate.
For New York City Mayor Eric Adams, the Department of Justice earlier this week dropped corruption charges against him. And yesterday, he met with border czar Tom Homan about the next steps in fighting New York City's migrant crisis.
How'd it go? Well, Mayor Adams and Tom Homan join us right now. Guys, great to see you.
Great
Morning
to see you.
together.
Thank you so much.
Make some news. Mr. Mayor, from your perspective, how did this meeting go? Why was it necessary?
Good. I think that, and Tom could speak for himself, I think he had a real level of frustration, and he was trying to figure out, hey, what's going on, Eric, what is happening? And we were able to get in the room and really articulate what are my powers, what are my authorities, and what are some of the things that we need to legislatively address that is preventing us from doing what we want to do, and that is getting dangerous people off our streets.
Right. And Tom Homan, as you know, Mayor, a couple days ago said he was angry at you in New York City because Sounds like last time you guys got together over at Gracie Mansion, you probably said some stuff. Maybe we'd like to do this and that. And I think Mr. Homan, and Tom, you could start with this. You were frustrated that he wasn't doing enough. He wasn't keeping up his end of the deal.
You know, I've been on the network for 4 years, and I've called the mayor out many times for not stepping up when it comes to public safety threats. But I tell you, when I sat down with him, I saw the cop in him. And he really does want to do the right thing because he is a cop. He's a lifelong cop. And so he wants to help take public safety threats.
Like, this is automatically bad for me. But in the bizarro world of Fox, when this monstrous piece of shit refers to corrupt cop Mayor Eric Adams as he's got that cop in him, it's seen as a overall positive. Good stuff. Future of the Democratic Party, according to Matt Iglesias, boys.
Off the street to New York, make New York safer. He also wants to help find these missing children. We got 300,000 missing children. That many of them are here in this city. We know that. We got to find them, and we'll be working with his intelligence division, his officers, to save these children because many of these children are in forced sex trafficking, many are in forced labor. We need to save them, and I think everybody can agree to that. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on.
Yeah, and, you know, people want to hijack this narrative and turn it into a political narrative where we're saying we need to have public safety. I requested the meeting. I reached out to his team and said, we want to sit down. This has been an issue I was talking about before the election. Spring of 2022. You look at these quotes over and over again. We need to go after these dangerous people in our street. And now I have someone that understands that narrative, and we are fighting together to get it done.
I know Tom has been on our network so many times saying he felt like ICE's hands were tied under the last administration. You've agreed to sign an executive order to open up an ICE office at Rikers Island so that these dangerous criminals that are here illegally can be deported. Tell the folks at home, because they'll hear this, they'll say, oh, they're going to come after me next. You said these are the worst of the worst. So who is at Rikers Island that will be deported? What have they done?
And you bring in 2 points where the far left has hijacked this narrative. ICE is running in our schools. ICE is running in our churches. And they are creating...
Tom's looking at him like, no, we are running in the schools. Don't tell him that.
In this frenzy. They're not in the business of just grabbing children. And we need to...
Yeah, the far left is in the business of saying what Tom Homan has been saying. Like repeating statements by the homunculus standing next to me.
You know, just stop all this noise. Rikers Island, particularly after all the reforms, Rikers Island is now having some of the most dangerous people in our city. And by having ICE on Rikers Island, part of our gang intelligence, using our intel with NYPD, correction officers, we could identify those gangs inside and outside on the street. There was no reason they were removed from...
Wow, this is amazing. A former Obama immigration official talking to the Democratic mayor of New York City. Way more Democrats than you see on an MSNBC show. That is kind of true. MSNBC is riddled to the brim with fucking former Bush officials.
On Rikers Island. And as I sat down with Tom earlier, I said that we're going to look at all the legalese. I'm able to do an executive order to put them back on Rikers Island, what they should be with part of our criminal justice apparatus.
You have a left-wing legislature. Everybody knows it. And for some reason, nobody votes in New York, so the same left-wingers get in every time. But if you had your druthers, would New York City be a sanctuary city?
What we will always be. This has always been a city of immigrants.
So you think it should be?
No. Let me explain, because this is what's getting conflated all the time. Where the sanctuary city is stated that if you're in this city and you're paying taxes, you should have access to the services. What I asked City Council to do, change the bill that was already in place and modify it that if you are committing a crime, that we should be able to collaborate with ICE, even on civil enforcement.
Dog, that's literally the opposite of a sanctuary city. That's the whole point. The point of a sanctuary city is that you don't fucking instill fear in the heart of undocumented migrants by saying if they talk to the cops, there is a existing longstanding agreement that they will talk to the ICE officers and therefore they will collaborate with law enforcement. People forget that the sanctuary city process was not designed by the woke radlibs or whatever. It was cops that wanted sanctuary cities because whenever crime took place in undocumented neighborhoods, they couldn't prosecute it at all because everyone was understandably worried about talking to police.
If you have committed a crime, that part of the bill is wrong. But everyday people who are here until they're moving to be documented, if they are going to school, working, paying taxes, then they should be able to provide police services, hospital services. Children should go to school. That is what we're saying.
You don't agree with that, Tom?
I don't agree. I think sanctuaries are sanctuary criminals. But we walked out of the meeting yesterday, and getting back on Rikers Island is a game changer. We can get, not only we
He's just so horny. I don't care. I'll take anything I can get.
Get the bad guys where they hit the street, the intelligence of how the TDA operates, where they're operating, all this intelligence they gather at Rikers Island, we'll have access to. But no, I'm strictly against sanctuary city status just because I think sanctuaries are for criminals.
Right.
And
they're a magnet.
But the beauty here is that we're allowed to disagree.
Right.
But we do agree on the fundamental that no matter who you are, it should be safe. So that's what people are missing. My life is sitting down with people I don't agree with 100% of the time. I don't agree with myself 100% of the time.
I don't agree with myself 100% of the time. He's so awesome. God, I wish he wasn't such a piece of shit. I love, like, that's such a funny fucking line, dude. That's a hilarious thing to say.
But when Tom and I are in a room, we're both saying one thing. No matter who you are, if you're hurting innocent people in this city and in this country, you don't have a right to be in our country.
Well, here's the thing. You can disagree on things, but Tom has made it very clear that if a politician stands in the way of the federal government executing the law, they are going to bring charges against people like you. And in fact, we've seen the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, go after officials already. So was that part of the conversation yesterday?
No, I didn't think it needed to be. I mean, frankly, first of all, getting to Rikers Island, step one. That's the first step. We're working on some other things that we don't really want to talk about in open air just because the city council will be putting roadblocks up on us. But the mayor and me have committed to several other things to make this city safer. Further collaboration. Again, city council.
He's such a cock. It's so funny that they can basically sit there and undermine him. Not that he fucking cares personally about like protecting otherwise law-abiding migrants, but it is pretty funny that they can just sit his ass down because he's a criminal, because of his corruption, and just basically make him say whatever he wants, and the cooperative aspects will remain the same.
I don't like him. I think, and Mayor Adams, he's dealing with these sanctuary law, right? That an EO can't override.
Right.
So we're working on some things to work around some of these things. So we can
You're
get some
being
things
careful
done.
the way you describe it.
I've got to be very careful because the city council, they hate me, right? The city council, they don't want immigration enforcement in this city. So we got to make sure that we collaborate in a smart way so we can get more bad guys off the street.
Yeah. That's the goal. And you said something that's very interesting. You said that elected officials who are standing in the way are like me. Let's be clear. I'm not standing in the way. I'm collaborating against so many others that don't want to collaborate.
Well, now you're collaborating.
Like I said, go back to spring of 2022. I was saying we need to get dangerous people off our streets.
But it wasn't happening.
Amazing. How likely he gets reelected? Oh, no shot. He really just said, let's be clear, I sold out. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny that they're bullying him. Like, they're not even, it's pretty funny that they're not even like maintaining the aesthetics of Eric Adams doing this from his own personal change of opinion or whatever. They're just straight up like, well, you're kind of forced to do this, huh? You bitch. They're humiliating him. Amazing.
Is that true? We dropped crime in this city at remarkable levels.
Did you help ICE?
In the level of enforcement for criminal actions, yes. The law says, Eric, you cannot do it for civil enforcement. But for criminal actions, yes. The police department.
So what's different then in this new collaborative agenda then? You just said, you know, we're just working to get the criminals off the streets.
Department, we have increased the number of officers assigned to our task force. Every morning we meet with our HIDA representatives, city, state, and federal level. Public safety, number one, I've always pursued this. Everyone knows that's
now,
what
Mr.
I
Mayor,
stand.
what is City Council, what are they saying about you wanting to change the wording where we could go after the illegals, even if they're paying taxes, if they commit a crime? Because I saw Vicky Palladino. I know she's a New York City Councilwoman. She's a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
And then Robert Holden is a moderate Democrat.
Mm-hmm. Both of them, if you were to talk to them about that change, they would tell you we agree with Eric.
Okay.
But the overwhelming number of council members who have made it clear that they're not going to modify that law. I don't have.
Why? What is their reason? Why would they?
I don't know. Maybe because they understand that New York City is a city entirely comprised of immigrants, and that having a bunch of potato sacks with Gestapo badges running around, running wild on the fucking streets is probably not great for commerce, probably not great for public safety. Why won't they let us hunt down these bad actors?
They protect the criminal.
Well, I think that you look at many of the policies that I put in place. Put in my anti-gun union, 20,000 guns removed off the street, put in 1,000 cops back in.
Oh, they hate that too. Well, don't you think New Yorkers need to defend themselves since you're not doing it, Eric? It's funny because they're not even saying like Mr. Adams or Mr. Mayor. They're just like Eric. They're hitting him with the Eric.
The subway system to bring down crime. All of these initiatives that I do around public safety, it's a constant fight with them because I think many people are articulating their personal reasons and not the feeling that the city has. 78% of New Yorkers stand with me, stand with what Tom is doing about getting these dangerous individuals.
But the problem is we don't know they're dangerous till they kill. Like that guy that put this woman on fire because she fell asleep on the.
The problem is we don't know if they're dangerous until they kill, which is why we have to deport all migrants, is an insane thing to say. But that is now the official line. Like that is, the problem is we don't know if all white men, white boys, white teenagers going to school are going to become school shooters. So what we have to do is eliminate white boys in school would be a ridiculous thing to say. Overwhelming majority of violent crimes are done by men. We don't know if the next man you encounter is going to be a violent one, so we have to pre-fire and kill all men would be a ridiculous fucking argument. So why would you make that argument about undocumented migrants that come from literally, and just not undocumented. I'm not even going to say undocumented migrants anymore because it's also documented migrants too. They come from all different walks of life, from every other part of the fucking planet. And these guys think that they are a monolithic force of evil, despite the fact that data shows the exact opposite.
The subway. He didn't have a criminal. He didn't have a record. But when after he lit up the women on fire, now he's a problem. He didn't belong here. Same thing with Laken Riley's killer.
Yeah, dumbass. That's how fucking. What do you mean? That's how the law works, dude. What the fuck? Like, why can't we do enforcement before someone is guilty of a crime? Is an insane statement. Like, he's just literally saying, why can't we be fucking racist and deport everyone guilty without trial so that we can lower the crime rate? Even though if they did that, that wouldn't actually lower the crime rate because they're not responsible for a larger share of crimes. These guys hyper focus on a minuscule sliver of crime and then turn around and fucking claim that like everyone is doing it. My entire family's first-gen immigrants. Not everyone was able to come legally right away, but they've always been hardworking people. To have that idea imposed onto an entire group is just dangerous. It is so dangerous. It is full-blown Nazi shit. Talking with your mouth full makes you sound like Tom Homan. Yeah, that's why I'm doing it. Maybe the dumbass Republicans that come in here will like me better if I sound like a fucking stroke victim who's really drunk as well. Like,
who was housed here, went to Georgia and killed. So even though you say, well, we want to be open to people, we don't know these guys are criminals until they act, and then it's too late. Then they become a problem. But if they never got here, they wouldn't be a problem.
And that's what's good about what we're doing right now, what Tom, the border czar, has done. I've said it over and over again. We need to control our borders and not allow people to come into the country, gang members coming into the country, people who are here to commit crime. I think what we've witnessed the border czar has done, we have seen a substantial decrease in that flow.
Tom, you know the NYPD. How frustrated are they that they can't fully have your back, be able to tell them exactly where these guys are, be able to go into these raids with you?
Oh, they're frustrated. I mean, the NYPD wants to protect their streets too, and they want to enforce the law, and they want to collaborate with us. I mean, I don't think I met a single uniform in the 4 years I've been coming to the studio that sit out front. I shake everyone their hands. We had dinner with officers last night, not only from NYPD. We had dinner with officers from Newark and from Philadelphia. We had a whole table full of officers that want to do the right thing. They want to collaborate with us. But
they're so horny for violence. They're like, come on, we're fantasizing about it. They really want to do enforcement. They really want to do Gestapo stuff, but it's just crazy because like the woke police don't let them do it.
I think yesterday's meeting, I came to New York City, I wasn't going to leave out nothing.
Right.
I did the last time, and I told them I'm not leaving until I got something. And so we're back into Rikers, that's huge. But we got other things we're working on, so I'm hoping. And now I got him on the couch in front of me.
He's like, yeah, I'm going to make this motherfucker also let me into the schools. That's what I'm going to do, because I want that. That's where the undocumented migrants are.
It's the people, he can't back away from this now, right? So I think you're going to see things move in the right direction. I really, truly believe that.
And we don't want to give the false impression that there's no collaboration around criminal justice. We collaborated with ICE to take down a very dangerous gang member who was trying to put grenades in our city, caught with a gun. So there's real collaboration with HIDA, our criminal justice apparatus on the city, state, and federal level.
Wait a minute. So when someone actually is doing like what amounts to an act of terror, let's say he's not lying. Okay? So it feels like there is a justifiable level of violence that allows local law enforcement to actively collaborate with the federal law enforcement agencies. So what is Tom Homan looking for, really? Yeah, no shit. If an undocumented migrant that is also a gang member is putting fucking grenades in New York City, then there is going to be an active investigation that requires federal law enforcement, the ATF, and numerous other agencies to cooperate with one another, Chad. My point is, this is how it fucking has always worked, okay? That's not what Tom Homan wants. He wants to go into the schools. That's what he wants. People, I don't think, understand. They are talking about hyper-specific edge cases that certainly exist in every society where there is already active law enforcement collaboration within federal agencies. They're pointing to that as though there was no previous enforcement of such things and no previous collaboration, while simultaneously admitting that there was previous collaboration, okay, to justify doing dragnets. Assume a position that is defensible to do the indefensible. Lying. That's it. That's what they're doing. They're lying when they say, oh, well, there are really violent, unimaginably violent criminals out there that require enforcement. And then when they give an example, you're like, oh, yeah, of course that person needs to be fucking prosecuted. Like, what are we talking about? But in practice, what they're doing is greatly extending the protocols of deportation to people that aren't doing any of those things. People are just like living their daily, regular ass lives.
We want ICE to come and be a part of that meeting as well.
Well, Mayor, let's talk a little bit about, you've been in the news all week.
Yes.
The Department of Justice dropped the criminal corruption charges against you. The U.S. attorney here in New York City, the Southern District, she quit yesterday, the acting U.S. attorney. And so did 5 members of the Department of Justice because they felt like being forced by the Department of Justice to drop the corruption charges was inappropriate and they should not have asked. And what she said was, you offered to help with the migration problem and the immigration agenda in exchange for the case being dropped.
Think about that. Think about my attorney, Alex Spira, one of the top trial attorneys in the country. Imagine him going inside saying that the only way Mayor Adams is going to assist in immigration, which I was calling for since 2022, is if you drop the charges. That's quid pro quo. That's a crime.
Why is he walking us through the steps of what happened? We don't have to imagine it. Why are you making us imagine it again? That is literally what happened. It's weird that he is demanding you close your eyes and imagine exactly what happened. But if you listen to him, he's implying that that is not what happened. But since it is what happened, it's almost like he's saying, look, I got away with it. Just close your eyes and imagine how stupid you must be to let me get away with it. He's doing a literal If I Did It style book release right here. Like he's fucking OJ Simpson. You know? He's pulling an OJ. It's crazy.
Crime.
That
It
is
took her
quid pro quo.
it took her 3 weeks to report in front of her a criminal action. Come on, this is silly.
So,
Did- right
Mr.
after-
Mayor, he
right-
said that we're not saying. They said when they gave you when they dropped the charges, it says it's not because we think he's innocent. It says we think that it affects elections. It's going to affect his re-election, and we think that that was wrong.
I'm sorry, who said
When
that?
the Department of Justice dropped the charges, they said it's not because they think the charges were unjust or that you're innocent, but they were doing it because with the charges they feel affected an election.
No, go deeper into what they wrote. They articulated exactly weaponization. When you looked at legroom turning into bribery because I asked for a governmental entity to do a building.
Wait, now he's just explaining the details of how he did his quid pro quo. Wait, what the fuck? Why is he explaining? Okay, dude, what is happening right now? He's just basically describing why he was popped. Oh, it's just leg room for, you know, allowing the Turkish embassy to not go through fire safety inspection. Like, who cares?
Inspection. We need to be clear on the root of all of this. And the
Turkish embassy.
Exactly. The, you know, main justice, I learned so much through this whole process. They review cases to determine moving forward or not, as my attorney articulated.
But
so
part
we look at the heart of what I was being charged with as the mayor. I was the borough president at the time. Not say pass someone. Can you do an inspection?
Tom, you're friends with the president, obviously. You came out of retirement, what, twice to go work for him and not making nearly as much money. Hope your wife's okay with that. But we appreciate you because you're fighting for this country and keep it up. But you talked to the president. The president was asked if this was quid pro quo, if he had anything to do with it, and he said he didn't.
No, I believe the president. And look, the president's doing a great job. And I want to say this. Look, I worked for 6 presidents. I think President Trump's the greatest president in my lifetime. He proves it every day. Every day he proves to me.
Obama give this guy a medal. President Barack Obama, I repeat, President Barack Obama gave this fucking demon a goddamn medal. Open your mouth when you speak, you fat ogre fuck. I can't tell if you're talking to me or Tom Homan, but I will tell you that I'm trying to be more like him. I'm trying to be more like him so that Republicans like me more.
Why he is the greatest president of my lifetime. Border numbers are down over 90% in 3 weeks.
Think about that.
And you know, I worked hard at it. You know, Christy Nolan's working hard at it. You know, the border, the chief of patrol agent working hard at it. But it was President Trump's executive orders that was a game changer, right? And we already got over almost 16,000 people we arrested in the interior. That's 3 times more than Joe Biden had a year from now. But it's not enough. We got to do more. But President Trump's leadership, when you get 90% less people coming across the border, how many women aren't being raped by the cartels? How many children aren't drowning? How many women and children aren't being sex trafficked in this country? President Trump's a game changer, and every day I'll say it 100 times. Every day he proves to me
guy cares about
why he's the
rape.
greatest president of my lifetime. What he's done.
And you know, Tom, one of the reasons, in addition to not interfering with your election coming up, one of the other things was they needed you to essentially assist Tom with the migration problem here in New York City.
And what does that look like?
When our beautiful ICE agents are running around arresting otherwise law-abiding abuelas, they have their hands filled with trying to do detentions for otherwise law-abiding citizens. So they don't have enough time to do rapes. This is how we're lowering the instances of sexual assault. For every ICE agent that arrests and detains and does paperwork for arresting a 15-year-old Guatemalan, that ICE agent is not doing a rape in the interior. That ICE agent is too busy doing paperwork, so he can't beat his wife. This is how we're saving the nation.
But people didn't understand what that looks like. What that looks like, as I say, every morning we meet with hideouts.
Right.
Federal, state, and city law enforcement agencies.
Which we now have a seat at the table on.
Exactly.
Well,
that was another thing we
But
both
that's
agreed.
good, and that's good because, as you know, Mayor, the way this particular case is being handled right now, they can refile the charges at any time. If you don't help them, they could refile the charges. And
That's not what they said. That's not what
they can refile the charges.
No.
Right?
First of all, I don't get into the legalese. I have an attorney to do that, and I pay a lot for that. What we need to be clear on, if the mayor of the city of New York is unable to collaborate, deal with intelligence information, sit down with my state and federal agencies and sit down to coordinate for public safety, we're still under the terrorist threat.
What are you talking about? Then fucking the normal process is you're supposed to resign in disgrace. Yeah, that's the point. Yes, if you are a criminal and you've done a crime and they caught you dead to rights, under normal circumstances, there should be some mechanism, or at least like some kind of personal interest in self-preservation, where you go, okay, I got in the interest of the greater public good, I am no longer going to do this job anymore. He's like, oh, well, I can't do my job if like I'm considered a criminal. Yeah, well, then don't do the fucking corruption. Like, what do you mean? Like, does New York fall apart without this man running the fucking city? Is that what it is? He's like, you don't understand. No one else can be mayor of this city. Anyway, great
We still
stuff.
having illegal gangs in our community that's bringing about destruction that ICE is attempting to weed out. If I can't coordinate that, that's a public safety issue, and we should put public safety first.
Governor Hochul said last night with Rachel Maddow that she would consider removing you. How would you feel about that?
She has her role, I have my role. And throughout this entire ordeal, which I think no American should have to go through, the torment of 15 months that my family and I had to endure for something I didn't do. I didn't do anything wrong. Throughout the entire ordeal, I said one thing. My attorney will handle the legal part. I'm going to handle running the city. We return jobs to our city. Our city is getting safer. We're building housing. I think that this is a great American narrative where I stood focused on what I was elected to do.
I want you to address the
Governor Hochul is an embarrassment position she holds. She stands on media after someone's burned alive on a subway. She stands in front of TV camera and says, I think criminal aliens should be removed too. But she's got the green light law. The men and women of ICE and Border Patrol, when they pull a vehicle over, law enforcement, you're in law enforcement your whole career. What's the first thing you would do? You run the license plate number. Are these wanted? Is there a warrant for these people? Who are they? Are they dangerous? Is that car stolen? All these things, right? Do you know ICE and CBP can't run DMV data on New York State license plate? So they're pulling over people not even know who the hell they are.
Is that the green light law?
The green light law. So she, on one point, she's saying, well, I think criminals should be removed too, but then she locks us out of DMV data. That'd be like us locking officers out of the NCIC, the Fed zone. Would we do that?
Yeah, that's because they don't want you to. That is because they don't want you to fucking operate within New York State, you dumb fuck. That's the whole purpose. It is to ensure, to the best of their ability, that you cannot operate. Because, hey, guess what? New York has its own law enforcement agencies. Okay? It's not like New York is a lawless hellhole, no matter how hard Fox and Friends tries to claim it is. Why the fuck are you working in New York City? Why are you pulling anybody over in New York State? What is happening? Well, I guess they have Canada, the Canadian border, that also is apparently pervasive and porous with fentanyl and crime. Those goddamn Canadians bringing in their Canuck criminals into our country to do crimes and fucking, I don't know, become right-wing political commentators who are very well funded.
No, because officer safety is paramount. She's putting the men and women at ICE at risk every day. The job's already dangerous. So Governor Hochul, she needs to be removed. That removal needs to be her. She supports sanctuary policies.
I don't know anyone who thinks she's doing a good job. She's an embarrassment. It's hard for me to be impartial on that.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. The migrant shelter, it's this called a mega migrant shelter that's going to be built in the Bronx. We interviewed a representative from the Bronx, and he said he talks to everyone on the street. Not one person wants that facility built. What's the status on that? Is there any way we can...
That's a great. You know what's interesting? If I go to anywhere in the city, when I had 220,000 migrants here, anywhere in the city, and ask who would like a shelter there, not one elected would raise their hand. And then you ask them the next question, how many of you went to Washington, D.C. under the previous administration and said you need to stop this? I took 10 trips there. So you cannot represent your concern merely from the sterilized environment of your office space. They should have been with us saying we need to stop this flow, and they weren't. And so the shelters have to go somewhere.
Well, how long
So
is the
let's
federal
just-
government going to be
let's
paying for the Roosevelt Hotel or any of these other sanctuary hotels?
We're continuing to close them down because of the job that we did. 180,000 out of our system. We closed down Floyd Bentonfield.
So one
We
at a
closed
time you're closing them down?
No, more than one at a time. We have to close down as the population decrease. We put in place a 30 and 60-day plan. No one can stay longer than that.
Because your president that you were working for and what worked for his reelection let that happen and didn't take your phone calls when you asked for help.
100%.
He
I agree.
iced you out. So
Right.
you're going to have
They only let Eric Adams have some breathing room in terms of his crimes of not killing every migrant immediately in the state of New York when he shits on Joe Biden. That's the only time where they're not like, that's the only time where they're like, yes, Mr. Mayor, good. Aside from that, every time he opens his fucking mouth, they're like, shut the fuck up, bitch. You love migrants. You want to do, you want migrants to do rapes, unlimited rapes in New York. You better shut your bitch ass up, Mayor.
Damn, this guy's good.